Go ahead and call the Griffin-Spalding County Board of Education meeting to order. We want to acknowledge that our board chair, Mr. Doss, is not with us in person, but he's on Zoom, and will be joining us via Zoom. And I ask that you place all your electronic devices on silent or turn them off so as not to interrupt the meeting. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Centel Brown for our Spalding County School Spotlight, which is mainstay.
Thank you so much, Leader Holmes, for the opportunity to present to you guys tonight the October 2020 Spotlight for the Griffin-Spalding County Schools. Our honoree or awardee for the night will be Mainstay Academy, located at 200 AZ Kelsey Avenue, located in the omnipotent District 1. How many scholars attend your school? 53 scholars from 5 different counties: Spalding County, Butts County, Lamar, Thomaston, Upton, and Pike. What is your school mascot? The Big Cat. How many faculty staff work at your school? 31 fantastic staff members. A quote from the proud principal on why they love being the principal of the school. Be the change you want to see in the world. This Gandhi quote represents every employee at Mainstay Academy. We work at Mainstay because we want to be an agent of change. We want to provide an emotionally safe environment that promotes therapeutic and academic growth for students and families. I am a proud principal of Mainstay Academy and very grateful to work with amazing staff members, district employees, leaders, special education directors, and the Georgia Network for Educational and Therapeutic Support. Number 4, what good things are going on at the school socially and educationally? At Mainstay Academy, learning is social, emotional, and academic. We strive to build positive relationships, including trust and positive emotions, such as kindness and respect, along with teaching strategies to promote positive attitudes toward learning. Mainstay provides social skills, curriculums, daily teacher conferencing, and strong communication to strengthen connections with homes, along with smaller class sizes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present the GSCS Board Spotlight to Mainstay Academy. If you would, this time join me for a photo opportunity.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the board spotlight for this evening. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And I was going to say he wasn't here, but I didn't see him. My bad. At this time, we are going to do our prayer and our pledge. Our pledge will be presented by Joshua Robinson, who is a 3rd grade student at Mainstay. He's going to do it via our Google link. But if you'll stand at this time, and I'll give a word of prayer. And I ask that you reflect and think about the family, the Yeoman family. Miss Yeoman's husband, Mr. Herman Lewis Loud, he passed away, and he is a former superintendent of this system. So we want to acknowledge him and send our sympathy to Miss Yeoman and her family. Let us pray. Father God in heaven, we just thank you once more and again for allowing us to be here and allowing us to have an opportunity to get it right on this day, whatever we didn't do on yesterday. Lord God, we just ask that you let your will be on earth as it is in heaven. Father God, we pray that the work that we do is pleasing in your eyesight. Lord God, we pray that you would cover our students, cover our staff, and cover our community with the blood of Jesus as we go through this pandemic. And Lord God, we just ask that you lead, guide, and direct us to make good decisions on behalf of all concerned. And it's in Jesus' name that we do pray. Give all thanks. Let every heart say amen.
Amen.
Joshua.
Good evening, everyone. I will be pledging the pledge of allegiance to everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. All right. Next we have Mr. Brown to present Griffin-Spalding County School System announcements.
Hey, Mr. Chair, you are stuck with me again tonight as our scholars are preparing for schoolwork. So I told them next month they're going to have to come in person with us so that they can start back presenting these announcements. And so announcements are as follows. October 12th through 16th, Griffin-Spalding County School System will be on fall break. October is National Principals Month, so to all the principals that are here, we greatly appreciate you for all that you do. October 5th through 9th is Georgia Pre-K Week, and several of my colleagues and I have been spotted reading for Georgia Pre-K Week. October the 19th through the 23rd is National School Bus Safety Week. We also want to shout out to those employees in Griffin-Spalding County School System that are breast cancer survivors, because October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we also bring awareness to domestic abuse as well in October for Awareness Month. The October 20th Board of Education work session will be at 4 p.m. here in the Learning Center. October 26th through 30th, Griffin-Spalding County School System Nutrition Department celebrating National School Lunch Week. Give a shout out to all of our cafeteria nutrition workers. And November 3rd, which is Election Day, will be Board of Education meeting at 6 p.m. here in the Learning Center. And then the 17th will be the work session for the Board of Education. That concludes our announcements, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Can I add just one real quick? We have the new principal at Cowan Road Middle School, Mr. Enrique Rawls, with us tonight, too. If Enrique would stand up and be recognized, even behind the mask, glad to have him with us.
Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Brown overlooked the National School Bus Safety Week.
What, me?
He overlooked National School Bus Safety Week.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I said it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I did.
All right. Next, we want to adopt our agenda as presented. If I could get a motion to accept it or add any deletions or adjustments.
So moved, Mr. Leader.
All right, we got a motion?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor, raise your card or your hand. Mr. Dawes. All right, 5-0. Thank you so much. For public comments, I think we have one via our Zoom, and we have one in person. We'll do we have both of them in person. Miss Patricia Johnson, are you here? That's right, I'm sorry. You know what? Charge to my mind, not my heart. We have Miss Patricia Johnson to come at this time, and please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members, central office members, any staff, and parents of students in the meeting. My name is Patricia Johnson. I am an educator at 1185 Calvin Road, Griffin, Georgia. And what else?
That's it. That'll work. We know what to send the bill.
The topic I wanted to speak about today is just a continuation of the last time I spoke at the board meeting relative to the health and safety of the students and the staff upon, our return. And the return is happening quickly. I'm concerned, one, about what appears to be the lack of planning. And that was communicated at the last board meeting. We knew about the pandemic, the possibility that it was going to be a pandemic in March, when we got out, I believe, the second week of March. So I'm having a difficult time understanding 2 weeks before we're to go back to the building that seems to be more questions than answers relative to how the students that are returning and the staff that don't have a choice but to return unless they take FMLA or they just resign, that we're still asking questions like, how are we going to sanitize and disinfect the desks in between transition? Now, I'm just speaking about middle school and high school because that's what's relevant. And when those questions are asked, and I want to just stop here parenthetically just to thank all the principals that are represented here because, being in a leadership role, I understand definitely through this transition with this pandemic, how tough it is on them because they have to relay information that they're given by administration. And sometimes they don't agree with it, but they still have to relay it to the staff. So when I was told that the students' desks would be disinfected with the quad, the line or the under quad. Now, I remember that those bottles that were given to us prior to us leaving in March. And on the label, it states, spray on the surface and it has to set for 10-15 minutes. So that's not a viable option. So it was corrected by one of the APs when I brought that to their attention, that you're absolutely right. That is not the product, that's not the use for that product. But, so then we were told that hand sanitizer, the teachers would go around to the desk and squirt the hand sanitizer on the desk, and the students would wipe it with paper towel. Okay, coming from teaching from home because of high risk factors, I made the choice to come back, being that all the accommodations that I asked for could be made by the district. And they are being made. And one of those accommodations was plexiglass around my desk. But now they're telling me that I have to come from behind the desk, come in close contact with the students who one class is just going to be finishing lunch and having their mask on. So I have to come around all the desks of all the students, pump spray the desk with hand sanitizer, and then they are to wipe it off. When we fail to plan, we're planning to fail. I'm not even sure that we're going to have enough sanitizer to get us through, hand sanitizer to get us through the end of the semester, let alone trying to use it for a dual purpose. It's called hand sanitizer for a reason. It's not called desk sanitizer. So I think that in the 6 months that you had the plan, then that plan like you were planning for your house and your family. You stocked up with what you, so with what you needed for your house and your family. So why couldn't that same judgment, that same planning be made for the staff and the students of the school district? Be the change that you want to see. If you want to be the change you want to see, then do better with the plan. Do better with the time that you were given the plan. I know, because it has been brought to my attention after the last time I spoke. Now I'm labeled as a complainer. But as a leader, part of the job is to bring concerns of your constituents and your colleagues and your peers, regardless of what people think or how they think about you. It's called good trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We have next Shawanda Duke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Shawanda Dukes, and I teach at Cal Middle School. As I said before, the last time I was here, I'm a product of the Griffin-Spalding County School System. Born and raised in Griffin. I'm proud to be a Griffin. First off, I did email today. You get my email that morning? I did email today. First, I want to say thank you to board, Ms. Smith, Dr. Kennedy, and Dr. Warren, who came in at my grade level with the concerns we had. And you not only did you hear what you just didn't listen, but you heard what we had to say, and some changes were made. And those changes went to block schedule. We had Friday as a Synchronous Friday, which gave us our teachers opportunity to not only assess children, call parents, do small groups. All of that took place. It was a change, but the kids adapted. Now we're getting ready to change again. And through without a principal meeting, we have one that took the hand on my start time. Now we're going to change it, and as I said in my email today, it's going to be a lot learning to do both simultaneously, which everybody is basically doing. And then with that, as I said in the post on Facebook, we should have been planning for this, those 3 weeks we had pre-planned, so that we would be ready. Not wait till last minute and try to learn how to do this, redo this, because he can get each year overwhelmed. So then you have a range. And then you voice and then you're falling apart. So my thing is, Friday was a day the teacher got to do really things that needed to be done. Because every day we had something to do. So with us coming back, the children's going to be changed again. Schedule. So they got to readjust to that. So I asked in the email, if y'all consider about keeping Friday as a Synchronous Friday. Students still work, teachers able to do the things they need to do to assess, work with small groups, call parents, and then the building can get decleaned being good before Monday. So I just asked you to think about as you did before, to hear some concerns of what's about to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. Trying to get my room together. But then between, I asked today with young Raw, is there going to be a spray ball? Because I thought a spray ball would be better than going around humping. Because what's the purpose of me having plexiglass on my counter and on my desk, but then I still have to go trying to keep everybody safe. So I understand we're all flexible. I'm always flexible. But I just ask that if y'all thought about simply describe what the remainder of the person that's to at least to get us back used to being in the building, the children in the building, with all the things we have to do, the one great stuff they got to learn to do, because it's not going to be normal. I've been trying to explain to them, but it's not going to be the same thing. It's going to be a whole lot of different. But to get us ready, I wouldn't do what I have to do because if I don't want to, I'm going to be weak. But I just ask that y'all thought about that, some way to help us to get settled into this coming back in the room and doing both virtual and doing in person at the same time. It's going to require a little bit more work than what we're already doing. Those are my concerns. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies, for gracing us on this afternoon. And I must say to you, I'm pleased that you all are representing not only yourselves but your co-workers. A lot of times, I heard Ms. Johnson say you get labeled as a complainer. So be it. So be it. We always say we got an open door policy, but when someone comes in and say what we don't want them to say, it tends to be a issue then. But I pledge to everyone, I'm one that will speak up and speak out, and I will stand with anyone that are bold enough to speak up and speak out, because that's why we say we got an open door policy, and that's something that we are trying to nail home here in this school district, that we have people who are comfortable to come and speak to not only the board, but the folks in central office. There's no need of having an open door policy if no one walks through that door. So I just want to say to you all, I know it was probably hard for you to come and do this 2 meetings back to back, but if they call you a troublemaker or a complainer, so be it. So be it. They'll be the one benefiting from the change. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
With that, we look at the consent agenda. I want to get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Please, ma'am, someone. Did we have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion? Can we get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Can we all vote by either raising your yellow card or raising your hand? All right. 5-0. All right.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes, sir.
I want to add one thing that did not get in the memo on the Chromebook purchase.
All right. Okay.
That company, Virtucom, that we're using is a woman-owned company. However, they chose not to get the official certificate. So you won't see it, but in Lonnie's work with the company, that is the way it turns out. We've been dealing with them for a while.
All right. And I just want to say thank you for keeping that on the front of your minds as we continue to look at businesses that are doing business with our school district to ensure that they are minority-owned businesses. They are either owned by women or veterans. And so we greatly appreciate doing business with companies and as we do what's best for our kids. So thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent.
All right. Thank you for making us aware of that, Mr. Smith. Next up, we have action items. We have the final adoption of a 2020 millage rate. Mr. Byron Jones, is he here? Oh, there he is.
Good evening, everybody. I'll be real brief. I told you when I first got here, it's been a long time since I've been part of the district that drove the taxes back. It's probably been since my mayor with her day, probably in 2008 or something like that. But this district, I'll be proud of this. It shows me that you're really doing, we're doing a pretty good job of taxpayer money. looks like it, like Mr. Smith talked about, public hearing, at least 5 years in a row. The millage rate at one point was 19 plus. You know, in Georgia law, you can get to 20. There are exceptions above that rate, but you have to go get legislative approval for it. 16.742 is what you're voting on right now, and it was 17.078 in 2020 fiscal year. I will point out on the 5-year digest, with the natural growth, we're still going to pick up close to $500,000, and that's before the tax collection fee, et cetera. There's some exceptions to that. So there's still some natural growth built into the digest that the school district will realize. So with that, on behalf of the superintendent, I'll take any questions that we recommend that you all go ahead and approve that. And then tomorrow, we will forward the documents to Mr. Wilson and Ms. Sylvia, tax commissioner's office. I think I'll vote on there too.
Mr. Jones, I don't know if you're familiar, maybe Mr. Smith or whoever, but I was reading something, I just want to make sure I'm on point, that some of the special provision that some businesses had as far as, you know, not paying taxes or discount, those are going away. Is that correct?
They do. Most of those roll off on a percentage basis
Right.
over 5 or 10 years.
Okay, so those are we pretty much the ones that were getting them, they're pretty much ending?
They're in the process. They're somewhere in that 5 to 10 year range, and others are going on. So it's kind of a rotating thing. But there are some that were 5, there were some that were 10. So as businesses are given those tax abatements, they do begin that clock of roll off.
Okay.
One thing to mention on that, this is just historical for me. When I've dealt with payment in lieu of taxes, which is probably some of the way this is set up, when those abatements are rolling off, the value of the equipment is also going down as well. So, you know, you might be getting a higher rate or lower value, so it's kind of a teeter-totter effect to a degree. So, you know, the economic development stuff, you know, when you're trying to bring stuff in, companies into the county, you're looking at all that. So you have to kind of bridge all that together. If you're correct with what you're asking, but it does kind of have a seesaw effect.
What about the land bank stuff that's been going on? How are we looking on the taxes on those things?
There are a number of properties that have been purchased by private individuals for uses for residential property, which is the restriction we have on that. They don't sell for a lot. Many end up being vacant lots once the property comes into land bank. A lot of those structures then are demolished because they're usually substandard, and then it's up to the owner to rebuild on them. So that builds up slowly because the values are not as high, but it does put properties back on that were not producing anything at all.
Right.
And so I think it's becoming more of a benefit to us as more properties end up going through the process and then become available for sale down the road.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions from any other board members? All right, so we need to get a motion to accept. I'm proud to take the rollback from 17.078 to 16.742. We make sure we get that out there on social media. Where Adam at? Make sure you pump that up there. Can we get a motion?
So moved, Mr.
Got a
Chair.
motion? Can we get a second? Sue second? Who made the motion? You?
Barbara Jo.
Ms. Barbara, I'm sorry, Ms. Barbara Jo. We got a motion by Ms. Barbara Jo Cook, and we have a second by Ms. Sue McDonald. All in favor, raise your yellow card or your hand. Big Willie. All right. 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I was looking at the agenda when I meant to say something when we had to look at the consent agenda, but I just want to shout out our instructional technology department. I see that we have a custodian that's been moved to our instructional technology department. So definitely give a shout out to Mr. Harper and just seeing that's a good move there.
Oh, wonderful. I missed that. Thank you for bringing that out, Mr. Brown.
Very interesting. He was almost the go-to person in their school, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Is there a backstory behind that, Lonnie?
He was a fill-in whenever the school's technician was at one of our other schools.
That's great.
They always went to him, but he had gone back to Southern Crescent and got his computer repair certification and his level tech Cisco certification. And so, I mean, of the candidates we hired, we give them a 30-minute hands-on piece, and he was one of 2 techs that applied that could complete everything in about 15 minutes. Most of the applicants don't complete all the tasks. We really want to see just what they can do. And the 2 applicants we hired was him and another, and they completed everything in about 15 minutes.
That's
so
good.
We're looking forward to having them on board.
That's great. That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you for that, Mr. Brown. Next, we have presentations, and we have Dr. Kiwanis Kennedy. She's going to give us a presentation update on our transition plan. Making too much noise over there, Dr. Kennedy.
I apologize. Trying to be safe.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Smith and members of the board. Tonight, we're here again to update you on our transition plans in preparation for going to in-person and remote learning on October 19th. We are now in our 6th week of the transition plan. Our schools are putting the finishing touches on their schools and classroom setups. Schools have developed communication. Place over the next 2 weeks to ensure that all schools have what they need for a successful transition. Our enrolled students are signed up for either in-person and remote learning. I would like to give a big thank you to our families for completing the learning model selection form, and a big thank you to our schools for following up with individual parents and guardians who had not made their selection at the close of the selection process. We're happy to say that we have accounted for 99.5% of all enrolled students. On October 19th, we will have 59% of our students coming to us in person, with 41% continuing with remote learning. Tonight, we're going to provide some updates in several areas.
Sorry, there's no quiet way to come in here.
That's all right, man. I was just messing with Dr. Kennedy.
Pretty well. All right, good evening, board members, Superintendent Smith, and everyone else that are in the audience tonight. I'm here to provide a brief update on our September 28th return of our special program student with disabilities. All right, starting about 6 weeks ago, we started our planning process
groups. Special education can't operate in a silo. We need a lot of different parts to kind of make sure everything works. And those three groups really came through for us. There's only 126 students in the buildings, but we had full participation and full cooperation from nutrition. So that we had breakfast and lunch for everybody, transportation so that we got to the school building on time and left everybody went where they needed to be. And all the school administrators that we worked with to make sure that all those processes were in place at the school building. So about 6 weeks ago exactly, communication was sent to the parents through a formal letter to them to get their intent to stay virtual or to come in person. We received a good of those back. The ones that we didn't get back, we had case managers contact parents, so we got the attention through that. We had a full 100% response rate for all of our families. So after we got okay, so from that we got the classroom fosters for the virtual and in-person students, and we split those between teachers. They either had fully virtual class or they had a fully in-person class. So once those student rosters were finalized, schools that would receive students on September 8th were contacted, and then district staff set time for us to walk through those schools just to observe or look at the classrooms, see what the preparation was there, and kind of walk through that day to see what it would look like when we had students in place. So we did a simulation. We went to the bus stop first. We talked about how students were going to get off the bus, who were going to be assigned to take the temperatures, check their masks. Did we have extra masks in place? Students that arrived without masks, how did they transition back to the classroom? What did they do when they got back to the classroom? Where did they get the breakfast? All that kind of stuff was what we looked at when we did the school visits. So some of the sample items, additionally, checking students' temperature, masks, like I just said, transitions throughout the day beyond just arrival and dismissal. So if they were transitioning to get their lunch, going to the restroom, going to any other room that they're not already in throughout the day. We made sure they have visuals for students to remain in designated areas. You'll see a picture of that a little later. I think you guys that went on the tour, board members, probably saw a lot of that where they got tape on the floors to kind of show the designation of where they're supposed to be and where teachers are going to be in those classrooms. And then we stressed that material containers or buckets for each student were in place so we didn't have mixing or sharing materials for those students. So some return visits were needed, but all those schools that we returned in the classrooms, they were ready by September 28th to be able to receive students on September. They were ready on September 25th to be able to receive students on September 28th. All right, so here's just some pictures that we had from the first day there. These are arrivals of many of our students. There were some minor issues that we had on the first day, but nothing beyond what we normally would see on any first day of school. So very pleased and very happy. District personnel were at every single building that received students on that first day just to make sure that everything kind of went smoothly, and for the most part, we think that they did go smoothly. All right, so just some highlights. A little bit of this was already included in the work that was read, but 126 students returned. 70 staff in 27 classrooms, and that includes teachers and paraprofessionals. Students returned to 13 of our school sites, and we've had full days the 28th, 30th, October 2nd, and we have one on October 5th, and we'll have one more day on October 7th for the end of the 2-week early reentry period. So we received some feedback from our teachers, just to see the teachers and paraprofessionals, just to see how the first few days have been going and see if we needed to make any kind of adjustments between now and when we have all the students back to the schools that are going to be in person. So just some of the feedback, 16 qualitative responses that we received. We received 32 responses from teachers and paraprofessionals. The group or the categories for just the general feedback was transitions We talk about that, that's from the bus to the classroom, from the classroom to the restroom, picking up meals. So we had transitions, instruction, mealtime, restroom and restrooming, student mask use, and behavior management. For transition and instruction, we had just one major issue in each of those categories that they felt like those major issues reported. The rest were either no issues or some minor issues. Mealtime and restrooming had no major issues reported, just the majority no issue and a few minor issues that they had. And then our two categories that we had a little more issues with, a few major issues and then some minor issues would be student mask use and behavior management. General feedback from student mask use that we had was that we had students that didn't want to keep masks on. And that was generally with our pre-K group and some of our intellectual disability students, some of the lower functioning behavior, our intellectual disability students. They had a little bit of difficulty there. That was something that through the comments and through our past visits, we've seen that some of the teachers made adjustments to that. So, and with the pre-K, we're going to go back out with and meet with pre-K teachers to revisit some of the issues that they may have there. The other issue that we saw from the feedback was that students were chewing on the mask, or we have some students that have hypersalivation, that they salivate a little too much and it kind of comes out and it gets those masks wet. So we have to replace those masks because it makes it harder for them to breathe through the masks. So those are some of the ideas of what the main issues with student mask use was. And then behavior management, that includes classroom, overall classroom behavior management, and also behavior intervention plans. And some of those issues were addressed in the behavior intervention plans. All right, so we had some direct feedback from the teachers. I asked them what went well for the first few days, and this response is better than I could have even written for the response. I definitely had to select this one. I thought this was great. Students came to school prepared, ready to learn. They have been kind and courteous in class and enjoyed being back in school. They have assigned seating and been able to socially distance in class. Transitions have gone well. We've been able to eat in the lunch and go to recess, which has been great. So that's one feedback. And next slide. All right, and the second, what went well, the students are adapting very well today in their designated areas. The instruction is going well, and they've been working really hard. So this is a picture of you guys' tour of Agnes, and this is Miss Franklin. She's in one of our self-contained joint curriculum classes, and you can see how our desks are marcated with the tape on the floor and kind of help students identify where their areas are. She works with a very young population, kindergarten and first, so that extra visual support really helps out. And I think you can kind of see there's some yellow marking around the teacher desk and para desk to kind of show where they should not, even if they wander from their school. Some additional feedback. I asked teachers and parents, what did you learn from the first few days? First one, scheduling is very important today in order to minimize the number of persons transitioning from place to place. And we ask them to have zone plans to make sure that they have paraprofessionals and the teachers are assigned certain students and they understand where they're supposed to be throughout the day. I learned that although it's difficult, it's workable. And the third one, no matter what's going on in the world, the students still want to learn. So there were some, I highlighted some of the really positive feedback. We did have some general feedback that we are going to look at and go back to address, and it's about mask usage, and we already talked about with the pre-K and 19 students having difficulty wearing masks. So we're going to go back and look at that within the next couple of days. All right, and then my last slide, just talking about October 19th re-entry for the rest of students with disabilities that were in special programs classes. We've been working with school administrators to look at the scheduling for students that are going to be back in person and virtual, and making sure that we can provide the services in both places. And there is an issue with being able to provide those services within the school. We had 3 rounds of the schedule. High school really only went 1 round with them. They had plans in place already, so we felt like they only needed to meet with us that one time. We had both rounds with the rest of the levels just to ensure that everybody had had a plan in place. And if there were any additional issues, we're going to be with those schools individually, but as far as I know right now, we've had those schools that wanted to meet with us individually, so we think that we're good to go with the interrelated students that are coming back on the 19th.
Mr. Kelly, before you go, I'd like to compliment you on easing some anxiety, I guess, of some of the teachers before kids came back. You met with them, and I guess you all hammered out whatever concerns they had, and you know, I got a good response back from them after we met with them. So I thank you for listening and to those concerns, and you know, doing what was best for all concerned.
Thank you. My district staff, my support staff has done a great job meeting with teachers that they support and getting that feedback with them. And when we had concerns highlighted, we tried to, be able to respond as quickly as possible to those concerns. And I think it's gone really well being able to have them in the building without the other students. I've talked with a couple of principals. It's been great because the principals were right there on all the transitions and really helped our students be able, because it's a tough transition. It's been months that they've been in the building, and it's already harder for our students to transition from, even a normal school year from summer to coming into fall into school. It's very tough the first couple of days. It's amazing how well everybody, I had a couple of principals that really had to be on the front lines and really assisting those classes, and I appreciate the extra couple of weeks that we had to get that before we had other students.
Yes, sir. So, great job.
Lonnie, I just got a text that says every time you change the screen, the sound goes out.
No, I got that, like, right when Ms. Kelly started. We had
Okay.
it fixed in. I am having also some comments, Ms. Holmes. Make sure you're using your microphone when you turn to talk.
Mr. Holmes,
They were losing.
Zach, you gotta talk into your mic, please. Just start singing.
I'm a Baptist preacher, so I can do that.
There you go.
That work?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, that brings us to our nutrition update. Our nutrition department is readily preparing for the transition as well, and have submitted our plan to the Department of Public Health. Mr. Wheeler will come forward and give an update in reference to nutrition.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Nutrition is ever evolving with this. At no point in time, our food safety plan had procedures for COVID-19. We had procedures for norovirus and things like that. So I kind of wish our previous guests had stayed, because we received some newer information from the Department of Public Health, and Dr. Alexander works with the State Department. They provide us additional guidance about sanitizing, things like that, those food contact surfaces. Food contact surfaces and other measures, and those will be included in our food safety plan. School nutrition teams have returned back, or will be returning back to their schools in full force. Today was our last day of production where we sent out meals on the same summer pickup and delivery. When the students return, or when we come back in regular 19, we'll all be back in our own school, home sites, preparing food for the students that are in person and the students that are doing virtual. Virtual pickup will be between 1 and 2, and we have the regular lunch periods and breakfast periods scheduled according to elementary, middle, and high. Because we have virtual learning, have to prepare both meals and have all students have access. Meals will be served under the same summer option through December 31st. Right now, that's what's been approved at no cost to the students, and any child 18 and under or 21 and under with a physical disability or no disability. School nutrition is currently helping principals design their grab-and-go breakfast when the students unload. It's going to speed, move the process smoothly through the building so they can load those classrooms. We're using tally sheets so we won't have a need for computers and tracking by student ID numbers, so that makes that process smoother. So I have my nutrition team meeting with principals and looking at their plans so that they can both set up barriers for food service, because food has to be protected, and keeping the distance between the student and food service worker. So we're currently doing that. On September 28th, that was the last day of the benefits carryover. In other words, if you were free or reduced last year, you had those same benefits on the first day, 30 days of school. Well, that ended September 28th. We sent out letters asking parents, guardians to renew your application for your student because their status has changed from the free or reduced status to a paid status. So it is very, very, very important that we get that message out, that parents, even though you're receiving free meals and through the summer, when this plan ends in December or funds run out, your child will be at a status of an approved application. And if you have not completed an application, then your child will be at a paid status, and that increases charge. So we have mailed out letters to those students who have not applied for free reduced lunch. And again, they can apply for free reduced lunch using our website. We have the electronic applications they can apply for free reduced. Okay, so our meal service model has been reviewed by the Department of Public Health, the environmental specialist, Ms. Gina Duffy. Serving line and service procedures meets the requirements. She wanted to look at the space with the sneeze guards, things like that. I had to send pictures of that. And also I had to send our procedures where we have, originally when I came, we had a plan for students to come through the cafeteria, through the line, point of service, picking up meals. We have sealed containers. I don't know if you had an opportunity to look at some of our packs or some of our meals we were serving out, but it's a 3-compartment sealed container. That's going to be, there's not going to be open food for sneezing and contamination. So she was pleased with that. She reviewed both the GSCS transition to in-person learning plan. That was the first plan she looked at, our supervisor's return to work handbook, and both answer all the questions she had in regards to the food service operations. And again, and this is the important part, I had communication. And it takes a little time with this because we're in administrative review, so it takes a little time to get additional information. But as soon as I get it, I try to share it. But the first thing we had to do as far as the involvement of what student nutrition does, the funding that we use is strictly USDA has guidelines on it, which for a lot of expenses, which are not. So I had to check with the finance and business unit at the State Department to see what roles would we play with it, as far as additional sanitizing and use of our chemicals outside of that physical wall where you cafeterias are set up. You have a physical wall there. It's kind of, it's implied that those fundings and everything is specifically for that area. So when I spoke with the finance and business unit, they authorized, I said those would be allowable expenses to provide sanitizing and solutions like that. Now, it's taking stages. All of those things for us are food contact services. Both the tables outside, the desk where the students would be. And our product meets the requirement. And this is information that I've shared with Mr. Bell as maybe last Monday or last week or something. We just got this information. Our products will serve or will be appropriate under what the food code, spray that's down, tables down, and clean them. Now, without an incident. Incidents for us, as I said, under the previous requirements of our food safety code and vomit. And we were concerned about norovirus. But again, all of this is new for school nutrition, and daily we're getting additional guidance to be included in our food safety plans on how we deal. So without incident, our products will be used as part of sanitizing platform. We have increased our supply so that we can use out in the building with maintenance as far as
wiping down the desks and things like that. So those are additional pieces that we're adding to. So here's more information coming. As I asked all my staff to do when I'm working with, just maintain the whole pictures with us until those guys have a chance to look at different questions and situations that are coming out, and we're working to get more solutions and answers for it. So that's what we are, student nutrition. Moving forward, excited about having the student stipend because it allows us an opportunity to kind of take care of some of our own expenses. So that's where the student nutrition program.
All right, thank you.
In your pocket.
And that brings us to our facilities and preparation, our maintenance and custodial areas have been working hard in preparing facilities. Tremendous amounts of supplies, personal protective equipment, and other materials have been delivered to schools. Equipment for temperature check stations are being installed at each of our buildings as well. Mr. Aikens will provide an update for our, where we are with our facilities preparations.
That was for you.
I know it, I know it.
Good morning. Just wanted to take a moment to update you on what we have been working towards to make sure that buildings are clean and our staff and students have the necessary PPE to be safe in the building. You were provided with a list of some of the things that we had already distributed. That list was as of this past Friday, so I have some updates as we go along there for you. We had already distributed 128 hand sanitizer stations throughout the tube system. We received another 36 in and we're putting those out. That's 2 more per school. Those are going out, started today, and there 12 went out first thing this morning. So they should be in the buildings today or tomorrow. So that's 164 hand sanitizer stands that are in the tools for students and staff to utilize. On the bottom of hand sanitizers, we polled the teachers earlier. Ms. McDonald, you were well aware. I told someone that we would be hard pressed to find elementary schools that didn't already have hand sanitizer, but I was surprised there were 1 or 2 classes, but for the most part we were correct. But today we have actually distributed 601 individual 16.9 ounce pump hand sanitizers for classrooms to go to the ones that did not have those. So those are out there as well. We distributed some PPE that was specific to some who had concerns or some health issues such as lab coats. We distributed 80 of those throughout the system to staff members. The counter shields, or some call them sneeze guards, also we distributed 130 of those system-wide. The face shields, which they can use to move throughout the classroom, we distributed 894 face shields to staff members who have needed those or requested them. Disposable masks, some of this is going out this week, but we had already distributed over 2,000. There's another 4,500 masks, disposable masks that are going out to make sure that we have everything covered for visitors coming into the building as well as students who may forget them, especially the first day. And I actually need to back up because we just got in, I don't even have this on the list, but we just got in another 1,000 to 1,200 that we put on buses to make sure for that first couple of days that students forget them getting on the bus or don't have them getting on the bus. We will have those. We also distributed 120 bottles of sanitizer for the buses so that they have them as well to come in. So those are there. Cloth masks for staff, we distributed 1,500 cloth masks out to staff. Distributed over 20,000 of the cloth masks for students. So those are there to be utilized. We distributed 19,500 gloves. There's another 20,000 going out this week to schools. And gallons of sanitizer. I can promise you we're not going to run out of sanitizer, hand sanitizer. We've already distributed 500 gallons of sanitizer. We're distributing another 420 gallons this week to all schools. And we probably have another 1,600 gallons of hand sanitizer. So I think we are well stocked, but we are continuing to get more in to make sure that we have these. There's a lot of other things that we have. I didn't list them, but it was specific things for medical needs that were requested and that we have been able to supply for our staff members. As you know, you voted and helped us to purchase those misters. We have those. There's 20, actually we purchased 25. There's 22 of them out in the schools, and we have 3 that are within the complex to use in case one goes down, but also for us here. And then we received 28 of the foggers, and we demonstrated those to custodial staff and administration this past Friday in the meeting, another follow-up meeting with custodians and administrators for that. And those would be used if we have an outbreak and have to go in and fully clean buildings and things as well as the misters. One of the things that I also want to bring up is the thermal cameras. We had those programmed last week. They are working on getting those in. We have a system working right now where we have installers going in, pulling the wiring and things. Once they get that, a crew come in behind them and mounts and places the cameras. And then another team is coming in, downloading the software, the updated software that we would use for administrators and whoever they designate to do this. Friday and yesterday, they have gotten 4 of them already installed for 4 schools. We have AZK, Mainstay, College of Career, and the Enrichment Center already have cameras installed. They ran wiring today for Orrs, Calvin Road Middle School, and Calvin Elementary School. So we'll be coming back and mounting those cameras, and they're moving along. What we're trying to do is make use of the time and distance. So we're trying to get schools that are close to each other. That was the reason for College and Career, Orrs, and the Enrichment Center. We're also doing the 2 Calvins. We will do Moreland Road and Carver Road, and we will do Future Road and Spalding High because they're right there together. And as I joked today, we'll probably go ahead and get Rehoboth so that we don't have to go out in the boot box to get there for one single install. So, and then we will work our way through the others as we go. So that is an update that we have on PPE and other items that have been distributed and are being distributed this week to make sure we're ready, fully ready when students come back on the 19th.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Akins.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad to hear that the scanners or temp scanners are almost in, and they for sure will be ready on October 19th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you. You know, I always ask when we get together, do we have any custodial openings at the moment?
Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, we still do. Last count, I believe there were 4. One was the young man that was promoted, so we're having to replace. We had one that transferred within the system and went from custodial staff to transportation. So we're continually working, but we have the 14 transportation drivers that have been filling in beautifully. We had nothing but compliments about them going in, and they're doing a wonderful job to make up that difference.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. What is the turnaround time if I guess a principal lets you guys know what he or she needs at their respective schools? Is that how it's?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
and
so
I
what?
sent out a message, and I just got the final. I'd asked them to give me one final, so I have time to get it in.
Sure.
So that was this past Friday. A lot of that is what you're hearing that's going out. as well as some other things. We've had to place orders for some of them. So we don't keep a stock of lab coats or things like that, so we're having to order them. But it's pretty quick turnaround on those type things.
Okay, because that was going to be my question. What's the turnaround time once the request gets to you guys and gets back out to our schools?
So
Pretty
far,
quick?
it's been pretty quick, and that's the reason I asked them to give me this last 2 weeks to get some things in. Everything that we're placing orders for, we have not had anything that was back ordered that we won't be able to get within the next probably week or so.
That's great to hear. And then I wish Ms. Johnson and Ms. Dukes had stayed. How would you have answered Ms. Johnson's question with regard to how we're going to sanitize these desks in these classrooms?
Well, as you know, we had a discussion during our tour the other day, and that was one of the options that came up. That's what we had talked about. I will say, we talked about the quads, the limit quad, the mid quad, those kind of things. They talk about the 10-minute sit time. There is recommended a 10-minute sit time to kill all the viruses.
Sure.
For coronavirus, it's just over a minute.
Okay.
And it tells you that on the sites with the quad. So when we're talking about a long sit time, one of the things that we were trying to do, and one of the things that's affected by using the hand sanitizer, and again, hand sanitizer because it's safe to use on your hands, it has 70+% alcohol, evaporates really quickly. Alcohol kills the virus. So one of the things that we were trying to do is to keep from burdening teachers with additional things that they were having to do. So middle school and high school students can assist with this. Put a few squirts of that on there. They can wipe it off. If they get it on their hands, it's okay because they're already putting it on their hands. And it kills the viruses fairly quickly, evaporates easily, and speeds up the process for that class change. So that would have been one of the things that I would share today.
And we have ample supplies, and a lot of people in the room can relate to this, as I can. Teachers are a little OCD about being prepared, and I get that. And I'm sure they want to be prepared with the supplies to keep their classrooms as safe for themselves and their students. I just want to be reassured that if Ms. Johnson runs out of pump hand sanitizer, I just want to be reassured that Ms. Johnson will be able to receive more hand sanitizer.
Yes, ma'am. As I said, prior to distributing this 400 plus, we had almost 2,000 gallons of hand sanitizer in our warehouse. So it is readily available. We're trying to keep from overstocking the schools, so we're giving 20 to 40 gallons each time we take it out. Custodians let us know when they get down to a certain level and we're distributing more.
Very good.
And even with the 1,500 plus gallons, we have more on order.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Are we using the Lysol, spray?
No, sir, we try not to use aerosols because of students with asthma and things of that nature, so we try to stay away from aerosols.
Okay, I thought I could find a plug, man. When my wife sent me out looking for some, I thought I was going to be able to call you.
Don't have any of that in stock.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Aiken.
I'm sorry, Dr. Warren, you just have to pull this back up. Sorry about that. I don't think about it, that's it. That brings us to our student level operations plans. Our school principals have worked diligently with their school level task force teams to develop their school level operations plans. These plans are linked inside of our district transition plan document. I have also linked the plans here that we're going to take a look at. You can open the link up right there. This is the link for, not the link for where it says GSCS BOE. Yeah. There. It also is attached to Assembly as well. Schools will be using these documents as communication resources for parents and students. This is where if you go into the district plan, you will see the same set of their format, and each of the schools are here. We will go back and add program challenge. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for noticing that program challenge operations plan is not listed here, so we will be going back to add program challenge as well. Now, will you just click on one for me? So as this is communicated out, you will see most of all of these are very similar in how they're laid out. But the schools have kind of detailed out their procedures and processes. At elementary, you see things about recess, you see about lunch, how lunch is being handled, how teaching and learning is being addressed as well, what the safety protocols are. Will you just scroll down? Keep going. You see daily routines that are listed out about morning arrival, how dismissal is going to be handled as well. So each of our schools have developed these plans with their task force at their building levels to identify how they plan to operate as students transition in on October 19th. As they got into discussing their plans and developing their plans, one of the things that came out of that conversation was thinking about procedures and safety precautions as students arrived in the morning, which led us to a discussion around our start and end times. We did have an opportunity to, as the principals were sharing their plans and developing those, there were questions that came up around that topic. We did have a meeting with all of the principals to discuss what their needs were around start and end times. And as you will know and have been made aware of, is that we have adjusted those start and end times effective October 19th to support schools with supervision and safety procedures that have to be implemented as part of the in-person transition. And the times by grade band for elementary schools, student instructional time is 8 to 2:30. Middle schools instructional time is 8:30 to 3:40. And high school instructional time for students is 7:40 to 3 o'clock p.m. So we did make a 20-minute adjustment to all of our grade band levels to allow for the instructional day and also to update, you know, the teacher workday changes that we made as well. If you can go back to the update. Thank you. And those times are also visible there in the update. Some schools created videos to share with students and parents and guardians on how the operation of the school will look upon their return. We will view 2 examples of those videos shortly, but first we will hear from our strategic cabinet principals and our executive directors of elementary and secondary to share with you information regarding the school level transition plans. We will start with elementary with Dr. English and Dr. Sauce, and move to middle and high school with Dr. Gardner, Mr. Pittman, and Dr. Warren.
Good evening, members of the board.
Good evening.
Who's watching. It's my pleasure here to stand with my esteemed colleague, Ms. Dottie English, principal of Jordan Hill Elementary School. I guess I could go ahead and take the mask off for a moment to go ahead and speak and update board. As Dr. Kennedy mentioned, we are going to give an overview, a summary of the transition to in-person learning plans as it relates to the elementary school band. And I would like to echo some of the sentiments that Dr. Kennedy just stated. I'm extremely proud of the collaboration, the rich collaboration that occurred between our elementary principals and members of their teams as they collectively thought through and determined and decided how their plans will be crafted and how some of these routines and procedures will unfold in the buildings in the safest manner possible. And as Ms. English, as I'm sure will attest to, there was quite a bit of collaboration and communication between the teams at the different elementary schools as they came up with plans, some of which you saw, the board saw, members of the board saw as you toured several of our elementary schools last week. So I wanted to start there and acknowledge the team for that. If you would, Lonnie, go ahead to slide 2. Thank you for that. So this slide just kind of references briefly some information around the in-person remote learning configurations. Our elementary principals work with their staffs within their buildings to determine teachers that would be designated as in-person or virtual learning teachers. There are a few isolated examples of some simultaneous teaching, and as I'm certainly aware, there were teachers that came forward, multiple examples to their principals, several to actually request an option for simultaneous teaching just based on the needs of their students and their classes. So there are some examples of that, but I will say that the vast majority of elementary teachers are going to be either all virtual or all in person, just as an FYI. So classes, of course, have been re-rostered so that there is clarity as to which roster a student falls on, whether it be all virtual or be all in person. There were examples where some students needed to change teachers, obviously, in that scenario, so that did happen. Parents have already been notified if that was to be the case, and it is the case in many examples. We are still, of course, providing instruction in all content areas. Specialist teachers, in most cases, specialist teachers will push into classrooms. So specialist teachers are aware, of course, and are preparing for that transition. Obviously, we're seeking to have as few physical transitions as we can throughout the day in the building. So in most cases, specialist teachers will push into the classrooms to kind of adapt their approach with that in mind. We'll, of course, still continue to provide our second step lessons, and that's virtually or remotely or in person as you would expect. Of course, we'll still be providing ESOL services. Dr. Bearden and our Level 6 ESOL specialists have already been diligently working to rework the services schedules for our children who receive ESOL services, and that's not just elementary, across all the grade bands, including whether or not those children selected virtual or in person. I know Mr. Kelly already referenced quite a bit around special ed. As it relates to gifted education, program challenge will, of course, operate. There were around 60 of the current program challenge students, if memory serves, 65 maybe, that chose virtual. So we have designated one of our program challenge teachers as the virtual teacher, and 3 will remain for in-person for those program challenge students that chose in person. At the secondary level, the gifted services are provided through the advanced content model, the AP, honors course, etc. So at that level, whether a student chose virtual or in person, gifted services will be provided through those teachers as ordinarily would. And Lonnie, if you would please, the next slide. I think this is the last one for now for me. So actually, Lonnie, it's okay. Go down. Will not let you. Okay. Okay. So the top of that slide there speaks to ESOL gifted and pre-K. I just spoke to ESOL and gifted. Pre-K is a very quick update on pre-K. Actually, some good news as it relates to pre-K. About 2 weeks ago, we were sitting at 346 pre-K students. Keep in mind our capacity is around 460. In recent years, pre-pandemic, we've been maybe 420, 425, 415. We've been over 400 for a number of years running. To start the year, we were at 346, which is obviously low. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've already had 20 more pre-K families come forward and register for our pre-K program, which is great. No surprise, the vast majority of those 20, I think maybe save for one, chose in person. No surprise, they're coming back because they want their pre-K babies in the buildings. But we are going to offer a virtual pre-K option. We did offer that. Right from the start, required that if we proceed in that manner, that the virtual pre-K option had to in fact be the rest of this school year, not just this semester, 9 weeks. So we made those families aware that were interested in the virtual pre-K, that it was the entire year. We contacted those families directly. We had 61 As of yesterday, 61 pre-K families chose all virtual. So we have deemed 3 pre-K teachers, pre-K classes as all virtual classes. Those are district-wide FYI, so there's children from multiple schools in each of those virtual classes. The remainder of the pre-K classes are just in person at their respective schools. But we are, of course, adapting and changing some of the procedures and routines in the pre-K classroom to account for social distancing and cleaning routines as you would expect. But we do have 61 as of yesterday virtual pre-K students, and the rest, my math isn't too good. 305 maybe something, or 304. Forgive my math. That shows in person as of now, but hopefully more to enroll soon. So I'll let Ms. English get some more updates.
Thank you, Dr. Sauce. Good evening, Board, and Mr. Smith, Dr. Kennedy, and everyone in attendance. I just want to reiterate what Dr. Sauce said about the principals have worked very hard at working together and coming up with a lot of great ideas and helping to support each other in this planning process. And we've all grown very close through this process. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that we've already talked about some, and Mr. Kelly mentioned some of these things when he talked about his students, which kudos to Mr. Kelly for having those students come in, because it gave us a great chance to have some time with those students and also really understand the process. So with morning arrivals, of course, teachers will come in and will be checked in by 7:15 at the elementary level. And then we will have staff that will be assisting student temperature checks upon arrival. Breakfast, you heard the nutrition report is going to be free through December 2020. And after temperature clearance, students will pick up their grabbing the breakfast and then proceed to their classroom. Lunch will also be free through December 2020, and schools will designate specific lunch locations. Lunches will be supervised to ensure safety and social distancing. You heard this reference, and most of you got to come and see this within the building about the transitions within the building, that the hallway floors are marked with directional arrows for movement throughout the school. Masks are required in all common areas and classrooms when social distancing is not possible. Our pre-K through 3rd grade students will remain in their classroom with their teacher, and in 4th and 5th grade departmentalized classrooms, the students will remain in the classrooms and the teachers will actually rotate to minimize the movement within the building. And for dismissal, car riders will actually remain in classrooms until they are called for release to the designated car rider exit. Bus riders will remain in designated staging areas until the bus arrives. Van riders will remain in designated staging areas until the van arrives, and walkers will report to a designated staging area prior to dismissal. Staff members will be placed in all different locations to ensure safety and social distancing, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Sauce.
So I'll talk some about safety protocols. Some of this information I know the board is aware of for the benefit of the public watching, viewing some of this information. And before I speak to information directly on the slide, I do want to revisit something briefly about Program Challenge, which actually ties in with this. I forgot to mention this a few moments ago. We have actually changed our approach to scheduling the Program Challenge, so that rather than say all 3rd graders in the district coming on Wednesday from 11 different schools, we're taking a different route so that the entire school, say all of Hannah Street students will come on the same day, all of Jordan Hill students will come on the same day. So we're limiting the cross-pollination, for lack of a better term. We're limiting that to between 3 and 5 schools per day at Program Challenge, rather than all students from all schools coming on one day, for obvious reasons, trying to limit interactions. So along those lines, on this slide here, it talks to some safety protocols that all of our elementary schools will be employing, including, obviously encouraging students and staff and reminding parents to keep their children home when they're not feeling well or feeling slightly sick. We applaud and we appreciate that for so many years, especially so many of our staff, let's plod through. We're not feeling well, we're going to be okay. This is obviously not the time to take that approach. Same thing for parents watching with their students. If there's a hint of some illness, now's the time to keep them home just to be sure. We've heard a lot about hand sanitizer, as some members of the board saw during the tour. There's hand sanitizer throughout the buildings at different stations, especially at many of the entrances, and also including classrooms. Classrooms have hand sanitizer, as Mr. Akins has already spoken to. We have made some changes to the daily instructional schedule, as I know the board is aware of, to allow for more scheduled breaks during the day for restrooms and also for some sanitizing breaks that are necessary, especially for the youngest children. We're obviously limiting large gatherings throughout the building. Some of your assemblies and things of that sort will not happen in the same manner that they have in the past. They can be virtually much smaller groups, classroom level celebrations, but not so many large gatherings, at least at this point, that we have accustomed to in years past. We, of course, will allow students to bring reusable water bottles, as water fountains will be used only to refill water bottles, not for individuals to drink from. As much as possible, we are keeping maximum space between desks. Again, some members of the board got a chance to see some of this classrooms around the district last week. So as much as possible, and in many cases, there's the furniture has been rearranged and reconfigured in our elementary classrooms to allow for far more space between students and between desks. Of course, face coverings and masks will be required when 6 feet of social distancing cannot be maintained. It's been well discussed and it's now part of our dress code, which helps to make sure that's clear for everyone. And as English already discussed, we'll certainly be reducing travel in the buildings, transitions in buildings for obvious reasons. Please go to the next slide. We have quite a few different training videos that we have, as a district, we have secured and published, including the staff and in-person and remote learning students. We have provided schools with documents that have links to a multitude of training videos to be shown in classrooms, to have been sent home or to be sent home, continue to be sent home via email, sent out via email, I should say, and through teachers' classroom to home communication resources such as Class Dojo, things of that sort. We'll continue to send those out and remind parents that those are there to view them with their children, and teachers will of course be showing those to their children when they return to in-person learning, to continue to remind them of our various safety procedures. One more. If you would please, thank you. That goes to some of the sanitation and safety supplies, of course, that our elementary schools will be using, much of which Mr. Akins has spoken to a number of times, including this evening. But our custodial staff will continue to sanitize high-touch areas around the schools. I have to tell you, and I think members of the board saw this last week, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed, I get to go to our elementary schools all the time. And I have personally just been blown away and so impressed with how hard our custodial staffs are working to keep our buildings clean and sanitized. And the children aren't there yet necessarily, but there's still a lot of folks in the buildings, and they look, from what I see, they look very, very well prepared. Our custodial staff is working really hard to keep that as the case. So they'll continue to do as they've done, to sanitize high-touch areas and common areas. Mr. Akins and his team have been great about responding to requests for supplies and materials and cleaning materials as they're needed and as they're requested. At the end of each day, we're asking teachers just to sanitize, spray the high-touch areas, just spray in some of the areas, not obviously scrubbing and cleansing, just some spray. Our nurses and teachers and staff will obviously continue to reinforce good hygiene practices, as they always do. And another shout out to our nurses. This is stuff they do every year all the time, but of course they're on the front lines now. And we're so proud of them and appreciative of their help, as they're really on the front lines to help combat this virus in the schoolhouses. Mr. Akins has already discussed, the thermal cameras are being installed as we speak. Again, as I've been around the schools already the first 2 days of this week, I've seen the crews at some of the schools already installing the hardware, and we're excited that likely by the end of this week, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Akins, maybe next week at the latest, these will be completed and staff's ready to use them for children returning on the 19th.
All right, school signage, Mr. Akins provided us with all of the signs that we would need that we have displayed around the building as a reminder to our staff and students of how to stay safe, the floors and hallways. We talked about this earlier, marked for traffic flow and social distancing. As far as bus transportation, we're requiring bus drivers and students to wear face coverings and masks. And to help minimize students from passing one another, buses will load from the back and then unload from the front. As far as visitors, and I know we've talked about this already some, it will be by appointment only, a limited number daily, no classroom visitors, no visitation during lunch. Parents will remain in cars during drop-off and pick-up times. Car riders are encouraged to open and close their own car doors when they can. Temperature checks and face coverings, masks are required. For health protocols based on the CDC considerations for schools and the Georgia Department of Health, of Public Health, we are providing a supervised isolation room for students with elevated temperature or COVID-19 symptoms that we will be able to take those students to once we recognize either a fever or symptoms. Staff with an elevated temperature or exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms will be asked to leave the building. The school nurse will track the students and the staff using the tracking form and record all absences, and students will still go to the nurse for medication distribution at the time scheduled by the nurse. Students should not be sent to school if they have been in close contact with a person confirmed positive for COVID-19 within the last 14 days. And students should not be sent to school if they exhibit the following possible COVID-19 symptoms: headache, sore throat, fatigue, new loss of taste or smell, fever of 100.4 degrees or greater, nasal congestion, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. And we've already talked some about this with classroom procedures, but that students have their own assigned Chromebooks, and as they're using their devices, they can sanitize them before and after use, and they will have assigned manipulatives if the supplies are available. And if community manipulatives are used, we will sanitize these in between, but I can tell you after talking to most of the principals, there will be probably no community manipulatives. It will always be single. If they had to use them, they would wait until the next day, so there would be time to sanitize. Students will not share supplies among one another in the classroom, and group learning tasks will be limited to allow for social distancing.
Lastly, from an elementary perspective, a couple of just final points. As far as the media center, for example, this is already happening, by the way. The students will utilize our Destiny portal to reserve books. Books will be sanitized and delivered to classrooms by media specialists. But as we speak now, many of our elementary school students are reserving their books through Destiny, and the media specialists have devised already pick up scheduled times now, so that children can have access to their books now. But once in-person school resumes, those will be delivered to classrooms, which will be sanitized upon returning to them. Our awesome, amazing elementary counseling team will continue the great work that they do through individual, whole class, and small group counseling guidance lessons, virtually and in person. So those will continue as they already have been continuing even in this remote learning circumstance. The board might recall that we adopted and implemented a fifth grade transition framework into middle school several years back that our elementary and middle school counselors collaborated to create. That is still underway. Much of the events and the activities associated with that framework are being adapted, have been adapted to the smaller settings, virtual settings, etc. But the various experiences and aspects of that framework still certainly proceed as a very important matter. At the bottom line speaks about students with exceptional services. Again, Mr. Kelly spoke brilliantly about that earlier. But of course, special education services absolutely will proceed and are proceeding whether remotely or in person. Again, as Mr. Kelly referenced some of which earlier. So that is all the content that Ms. English and I had to speak to related to kind of summary of elementary plans. Certainly welcome questions or comments from the board before we step away for our secondary colleagues. Yes, Mr. Don?
Thank you. Students will go to nurse for medication distribution at time. All nurses will be giving medications out?
This is what a normal procedure is in elementary school. The nurses have the medication because parents have to sign forms that go to the nurses, and so then the nurses distribute. These are students that are on daily medications and such.
I just want to be sure a licensed person is going to
For
distribute
sure.
and give medication, not a parapro or not a teacher? Because at one time in my career, I was asked to give it out. I said, no, it's not happening.
We are very blessed
Okay.
and fortunate to have nurses in
I
all
know.
the schools, and Miss Evans, our district nurse. If
Right.
for some reason your nurse is absent, if she doesn't have a sub, she did this for me this week, she comes out herself.
Very good. Thank you so much.
First of all, I'd like to say good evening to our board members and our audience at home. If that is how to stop the slides. First of all, as Dr. Sauce mentioned, I also want to give thanks to an extraordinary team that I have the pleasure of working with, our principals, assistant principals, and our school-based task force. I want to thank them for their collaboration, perseverance, and flexibility in creating their transition plans. We were fortunate to collaborate with some of my colleagues throughout the state in hospitality schools as well as in the social service schools as they started back in school in remote and virtual setting back in early August. So we were able to have several Zoom and Google meetings with those individuals, myself and my principals, to learn from their experiences to craft our plans. And although we're building this plane as we're flying, so to speak, we have an excellent crew to accomplish this mission. I'm very thankful for that. Okay, next slide. Okay, services, in-person or remote, regardless of the mode, students will still receive ESOL services, Excel Education Student Services, gifted, ACL, emotional learning, MTSS, PBIS, and 504. So regardless of their location, they will still be served. And it's nice to return to a sense of normalcy to have students back in the building. That's going to be a nice sense of normalcy for both our students and teachers. Regarding social emotional learning, it's going to be very, very critical that we provide all students with a solid acclimation process back to school-based learning inside the building. For our middle schools, they will continue their second year with our second step curriculum. It's a great, highly rated ACL program. And for our high schools, Ms. Michael and I collaborated this summer with the high school principals to select Cap Strong as the ACL program at the high school level at Griffin High, Spalding High, and ACK. And it's implemented week, and I think Ms. Michael is going to speak to that in her next presentation. Next slide. Okay, as Dr. Kennedy mentioned, we have a new bell schedule that's cut short by 20 minutes with an instructional day. We have some good points of different in-person learning as well as remote. In terms of the grades being determined predominantly by some assessment scores. Instructional materials will be provided pretty much via Chromebook, paperless method. We have some excellent instructional software programs and platforms that are used to provide that, such as MobileMath, which is used for providing interventions, RightScore, Delta Math, Ingenuity, Freckle, USA Test Prep, as well as Smash Connect. These are great programs to individualize instructions for students, as well as to provide quick and easy assessments for teachers to pinpoint a student's strengths and weaknesses, so they can have a laser-like focus on improving that student's achievement. Regarding parent warranty, we're really stressing to our parents to be engaged and have an account on Infinite Campus as well as school classroom. Also, we're stressing, continuing stressing phone calls and parent conferences, sometimes virtual, with students, parents, and their teachers. Also, some of this is up there, but some of our schools are going to be using this program called Smart Pass. Back in the day, we had paper hall passes, but Smart Pass is an electronic version of a hall pass where students can use their cell phone or their Chromebook. So we're going to do it paperless. Also, it will facilitate contact tracing because you'll know where a student is in the building and at all times that they're released. You guys say 5 kids go to the nursing station, and that program, if you set the limit at 5, then that 6 students have to wait to be released from the classroom to assist with contact tracing. And I'll tell you, I like the middle school, unfortunately. The majority of our teaching in the middle schools and high schools will be of a simultaneous method, where a teacher does both remote students at home and teachers in the building. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Scheduling at the secondary level is pretty complex and very nuanced at the same time. And meeting with the principals and working with their leadership teams, they involve the task force. We've taken that method of simultaneous teaching for a couple of reasons. To keep the class size small for in-person students, try to change schedules during the school year was extremely difficult once the master schedule was set. Also, it keeps consistency with our teachers and students, having to go rich relationships in the first day of school. If we change, then that relationship has to be formed, and if we change back in January, depending upon the students and their parents' choice, that could be a third chance for that student. Additionally, we have a large number of teachers that are seniors, meaning they're the only ones that teach that particular course. When I think about gifted, ESOL, honors, special ed, and connections, and elected at the high school level. Additionally, we want to keep the schedule consistent between our students at home learning in a remote fashion and our students in the building learning in person. So at this time, I'll turn it over to our next presenter that will speak to you about daily routines.
All right, well, good evening again. Good evening to the board, those of you in attendance. And so I'm going to come to you to talk about daily routines within the secondary environment. And so we've had to change a bit just to accommodate our students and to make sure that they are safe. And so you'll see from the presentation, the morning arrival will be 7 o'clock for high school, 8 o'clock for middle school. And Mr. Aiken talked to you briefly about the thermal camera setup that will be at our entrances to make sure that our students meet the appropriate temperatures to enter the buildings. We have set aside isolation places for those students who do not meet those temps, and there's procedures in place to contact the parents to come get them so that they can take them to the doctor. And so we will be checking those upon their entrance. Those will be at the bus ramp and the front entrance. I know at our school we have mostly bus riders, and so if you look into the plan, you'll see a detailed layout as to what's happening when those kids come in from the bus and from the front entrance. After the temperature clearance, students who are not eating breakfast will report directly to first period. And so that's a major shift because previously students would either go to the cafeteria or they would go to the gymnasium. But we wanted to limit those interactions and the possibility to transmit anything. And so our students are moving to first period if they're not eating. The change in the schedule did accommodate us for that, so we appreciate that actually being approved. Breakfast is another thing that's different. We've been working with nutrition staff. I know Dr. Wheeler talked about that previously as well with the grab-and-go station so that we can keep the students moving and prevent any kind of power-ups that may occur when they're getting those breakfast stations. We do have school personnel that will be on duty stations as well. That didn't change. That's something that's the same. And during lunch, meals will be consumed in classrooms in some of the schools. Classroom teachers will accompany students to collect lunch at their designated grade level, and there are a limited number of socially distanced cafeteria tables that may be available. In the places where those tables are being used, there are dots that have been placed on those tables to let students know where to sit. But the biggest thing that we try to do in development of these daily routines is limit interactions and limit the possibility of any kind of transmission where students come in close proximity to one another. Okay, now speaking of transitions within the building, if you've been in school buildings, you will probably see the stickers that are on the floor. I know my leadership team and I, we came in on Saturday to go through our plan once again and to mark off places outside of the building for students to stand and the back of the building or the bus yard where they will be standing, and also to put place markers on the floor to let them know that it's a one-way loop that they're traveling while they are in the hallway. As Dr. Warren stated before, in middle school, we have a little bit more transitions, but we do want those to be limited interaction transitions. And so we've gone through these plans with our teachers to let them know we're rotating one way, and we're doing that loop to make sure that students do not come into close contact with one another. Class will be released in a staggered manner, and lockers will not be used to limit hallway activity. That's a major shift that we did talk about that being the most appropriate, especially for our sixth graders who you have to think about have never been in a school building. And I can tell you just in my 30 years as principal, lockers and sixth graders, that's a day's worth of work. And so we didn't want to put that on top of ourselves where we had to teach them to come in that close proximity with them as well. Students will not be allowed to use the restroom during those transitions. We do have restroom breaks in place. And then we also have a procedure for emergencies for students who have to go to the restroom. Social distancing will be mandated as well as the mask when we have those transitions. And again, staff will be posted to assist and direct students during those transitions. So when you talk about your administrative team, they will be placed at the end of the hall. We do have carts to where we can assist teachers or students, whoever may need our assistance during those times, during those transitions, and just to make sure they go smoothly. All right, and here we have our staggered dismissal. So we do have walkers, car riders, drivers are also part of high school dismissal, and our bus riders. So with the schedule that we have now, 3:40 ends our instructional day, and so we can start our release at that time. So walkers will be dismissed first. We want to clear them before we make way for anybody else. They'll use the front entrance and the exit of the building, then our car riders will follow. So our car riders and drivers at the high school will be dismissed afterwards. At the middle school level, you have your car riders that will come out. They also will exit through the front door. And our bus dismissal, we do have bus loads. Again, that limits the number of students that exit at one time. If we were to dismiss all bus riders, then that would be chaos. So we do have a bus load 1, bus load 2, bus load 3. Where appropriate, and they will exit the building on the bus ramps and then proceed to their buses based on how they've been assigned.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, I want to share some more information with the board. Good evening, everybody, in reference to safety protocols. And so a few things that we want to, of course, mention, like my colleagues, very important that we follow those CDC considerations and those Department of Public Health, everything. And we know that that changes periodically, so we have to always stay in tune with everything as far as the expectations that are there for us. Like it was mentioned previously, when it comes to the students and staff members, if by any chance anybody may end up be showing any symptoms or may end up becoming ill or sick, and those students, number one, hopefully if they're at home, they'll have an opportunity to stay home, staff members as well. Of course, when it comes to the sanitation, we will have those sanitation stations throughout the building and those key point areas to be able to support the idea and concept that we want to keep a health and hygiene area safe and cleanliness all throughout the course of the building. So those things will be put in place. Of course, the masks that we've been wearing, that will of course stay into effect in all areas at all times, especially when social distancing cannot be maintained. We really want to have no physical contact that is occurring. Try to refrain from having those large group gatherings that happen with staff and students so that we can all take care of each other throughout this process. Go to the next slide. Next piece goes to training, education. I heard this from the elementary as well. And so within this process, really this pre-planning, we were beginning to focus on the importance of all of our safety protocols, giving guidance to our staff members in terms of practices that should be in place, measures in terms of how we're going to handle things if somebody becomes ill. All of those things from guidance and videos have really been set forth from the beginning. especially when it comes to in-person and remote learning. Our principals have been given some autonomy really to go and to create videos for their students so that they can support the idea and concept of what exactly will be going on in their buildings, especially come October the 19th for in-person learning along with remote learning. Those things also can take place on our school websites, emails, information, just to have plenty of correspondence that goes out through parents and other things to make sure that everybody is on the same page with what October 19th and a lot of simultaneous learning will essentially look like. So a lot of guidance has been given out to teachers and also will continue to be given out to staff and parents as well throughout the process. Next piece goes to sanitation and safety supplies. Of course, at the highest level, when it comes to custodial staff, they will continuously focus on those high-touch key areas multiple times, kind of with the idea that every hour, 1 hour, you'll be focusing on those high areas, restrooms, making sure that they're clean for our staff members, for our students, working with administrative services, ensuring that all the schools have those correct supplies when it comes to cleaning and sanitation. Of course, working with our custodial staff to have specific detailed procedures in place. Those things have definitely been happening at our middle and high schools. And then just continuing, as was mentioned before, when it comes to sanitizing solution that's placed on the desk, really just have that importance and education is given to the students when they come in, especially as we move into October 19th, so that everybody knows the guidance. You come to a clean desk, you leave a clean desk. So just really having to work together through some of those processes is very important. Working with school nurses is going to be at the highest level when it comes to hygiene and having those health practices, making sure the students are washing their hands before and after meals, doing restroom breaks and things of that nature. All of those things will be taking place during this time period as we move forward as far as our safety and sanitation supplies as we kind of go into October 19th. It was mentioned as well when it comes to the school signage. We want to continue to have reminders throughout all of our school buildings about the importance of ensuring that we're wearing masks and coming in, that we're utilizing some of our sanitizing stations. So those practices will, of course, be in place. You heard Ms. English speak about the signs and the flooring where you'll see different towels have already kind of been used in many of the schools, giving students guidance of which direction they need to walk. Also, the walls are being used, as Dr. Garner talked about, of giving some more signage as far as signals or dots that are placed along the walls. So giving students guidance in terms of what's actually 6 feet social distancing in the hallways. Some of those things are very important. It was mentioned already as far as how the bus drivers and everybody will utilize a high level of focus when it comes to ensuring that students are all on the same page with wearing masks or face coverings at all times while they're on the bus. So those things will continue to go in place. Also with the loading to ensure that nobody is really passing each other at a high level. When the students come on from one direction, they'll be able to leave off on the other. All of those things will continue. Of course, the buses will be disinfected before and after students are on the bus. And then we're limiting the procedures when it comes to visitation. As Ms. English mentioned, we'll continue to have those things at appointment or emergency type situations. Really try to refrain, especially at the high school level, from visitation when it comes to during lunchtime, no food is going to be brought into the building, just to ensure that we are keeping all of our students and staff members safe. Temperature checks and things of that nature will, of course, continue to take place with thermal scans, as it has been mentioned before. Okay, health protocols. Continue with the health protocols we talked about. When it comes to the temperatures, another piece to mention to you is the isolation rooms. All schools have been deemed with ensuring that they have an isolation room where if it's identified that somebody has shown some signs and symptoms, and thus they may be waiting for the parent to come and pick them up, then they will stay in the designated area and be monitored by staff members. So we all have those things in place. Of course, as it was mentioned previously, if somebody is showing symptoms or has been in contact with somebody, then they should not be coming to school. They need to stay home at that time. And then, of course, if somebody is showing any signs when it comes to what was mentioned before, headaches, fevers, nausea, vomiting, things like that, shortness of breath, then of course those individuals also need to stay home for their own safety protocols and safety measures. So those are some of the things that we really want to do at a high level when it comes to safety and health protocols for all of our students, because again, that's top priority at this time as we move forward to October 19th. Thank you.
So in relation to classroom procedures, teachers are creating seating charts right now. What we actually did was provide them with the students who are returning in person. The purpose of the seating chart is to make sure that those students use that same desk. And it also helps with contact tracing because as we thought through processes, we know it's important to know who was around those students. So they pretty much would be sitting at that same desk, facing forward. I know in any training that we've done in education, when you talk about students working in groups and things of that nature, students will be chunked differently, but right now we're going back to the traditional way of facing front so that you can see the teacher. Students are using their assigned Chromebooks, so they wouldn't be using any classroom computers. They've been assigned those and they'll carry those with them throughout the day. If they use classroom devices, they will need to sanitize them. There is sanitizer in there, and I've spoken to some of the other principals about, for example, if you use materials, there's a clean material pile and there's a sanitizing pile. And so those things are in place as well. Students are encouraged to bring their own individual classroom supplies in their backpacks. We talked before about them not using lockers, and so they will have access to their materials. And then they will not share supplies with the class. And group assignments can still be conducted virtually using Chromebooks. I don't know if we spoke about it previously, but Dr. Warren did mention simultaneous learning. And so some weeks ago, I know the coaches, for example, Ms. Davis in my building, one of my assistant principals and one of my coaches, actually participated in the distance learning playbook training where they talked about simultaneous teaching. That was relayed to the teachers, and we actually went through that practice with some coaches from Harvard. And our teachers have been practicing that this week just so that they can get comfortable with that. That comes over time. We don't expect them to be completely comfortable with that, rolling it out, because that's a major shift, that's a major change, and it will take time.
Dr. Gardner, let me inject a question right there. I had I think they sent it to us, a teacher was concerned about the positioning that she would be in as far as the camera on her for the virtual students to be able to see her if she had to work on a board or do something on a board. How is that playing out? How have you all looked at that as far as the teacher's position for both virtual and in-person students?
Yes, sir. And so in order for that to work, the teacher will need at least 2 devices. And so they've been instructed to use a classroom computer and a Chromebook. So in order to always see the teacher, the Chromebook will be projected on the teacher, whatever the teacher is doing. But the classroom computer would be where the teacher actually could house the virtual learners. And so you can toggle between the screens on the laptop, but the laptop would be, in essence, where the student could see the teacher and what the teacher was doing. So you will need 2 devices in order for that to work.
So with you saying that, are we, I guess, you know, with me receiving this, I don't know if any other board member received that. With that being said, have we, you know, kind of made sure that the teachers have that capability to make sure that they have the 2 devices to be able to do this?
Yes, sir. And I know that for sure at my building, at Carver where I've been, I'm certain that the other school buildings as well, but that's something that we can check on. We even talked about teachers who are comfortable moving throughout the classroom, getting carts, and also having wireless keyboards and wireless mouse so that they could still control the computer that was on their desk. So all of those things have been thought through, but there's no way really that it can work out 2 devices. And so as we've done the training, that's one of the things that we prioritize as well. I do know all of our teachers have classroom computers, all of our teachers at Kennedy for sure. Carver, I know because I attended the training over there personally, all of them have at least 2 devices. In some cases, teachers do have 3 devices. For instance, Mr. Knapp, my technology teacher, I don't know how he makes that work. It just works for him. But he said that that's helped him even more when he has those 3 devices. But of course, he's a technology teacher. He's a little bit more inclined to use all of those things. But the minimum requirements, they have been provided.
Dr. Warren, if we can kind of keep an ear to the ground on that, make sure teachers that, and I guess we need to make sure that they speak up and let someone know that they have that difficulty. If we can get that message out, because that seems to be a concern. I've gotten a few emails about that, teachers' position and how they're going to be able to speak to, both virtual and in-person students. So.
Yes, Mr. Holmes, we will keep back to the ground on that as we get out of schools. And Dr. Barber mentioned 2 things. We were fortunate with last Tuesday there were several individuals, myself, principals, coaches from various schools in our school district that participated in a 4-hour professional development session that was virtual from Mr. Douglas Fisher. He's a world-renowned author with the ASCD Education Group. And it was on remote learning and incorporating remote learning and in-building learning. We picked up a lot of information from that. Coaches crafted PL that we delivered to schools. From last Tuesday, we had a PL session last Thursday afternoon at Park Road Middle School. Ms. Douglas hosted, the store was out, Dr. Ross came down, he was with the team, and myself, Dr. Gardner, another supposed from middle schools, we're going to take the house schools as well. But the PL centered upon sometimes teaching video series. It was in a Google Docs link. We created a simultaneous teaching resource pathway. We also discussed modeling flipped classroom in a concurrent setting that Mr. Dr. Barker just discussed. And we also modeled spatial rotation in a concurrent setting. So we're taking some steps to increase our teachers' capacity to teach in both formats. This is new to us based upon this pandemic, but we are taking steps to equip our teachers as best we can to perform their job. Yes, sir.
Okay. Dr. Warren, all of us have pretty much received the same emails, either from our constituents, and this particular email was from a teacher at one of the high schools stating that he was concerned about the number of students. And I know when we toured last week at the high schools, we're like at 50% as far as attendance coming in-house. He was concerned about high school classes having 26 kids in a classroom, and high schoolers are much bigger than the wee ones. How can we, and he had a suggestion, have we considered extended day perhaps for some teachers that do have high numbers? I just want to be sure everyone is comfortable. I want to be sure for sure our students and teachers feel comfortable, but 26 high schoolers in a classroom, that's a lot of bodies. So
we can take that into consideration. We're looking at various options to accommodate to get the classroom numbers down. That's a function of the budget. In terms of that's additional pay to have teachers working in the day. And also it's a function of the scheduling needs of the school or master schedule in terms of segments needed and what time. Be it algebra 1, geometry, math grade, tenth grade, etc. That is something Mr. McDonald we can take into consideration.
Yes, and thank you. When it comes to safety of our students and our teachers, I'm not sure that, for me personally, money is not an issue. I just want our people, we voted to send 1,800 people back to work, so to speak, and I just want to be sure that our teachers feel comfortable in the environments they're going to be working in. And I'm not asking extended day for every high school teacher out there. I'm asking extended day perhaps for those classes when we start back in 2 weeks that are really high in numbers, that we do something for those particular teachers?
We can look at that. We also stress the mask wearing and all those safety precautions to prevent the spread of COVID as well.
And how do you feel, you know, the board gets a lot of emails about, and Ms. Dukes has been here twice now stating that teaching simultaneously, virtually and in person, I know some schools are not doing that at all. I know some principals that are dead fast against it. How can we help a Ms. Dukes that feels very uncomfortable doing that, although she's quite competent, that's readily seen. I just want our teachers to feel comfortable. We're asking them to do something, number one, that they've never done before, as you just stated, and then we're asking them to do something actually twice, because planning for virtual and planning for in-school, in brick and mortar is totally different. I don't know. I get a vibe that some are really comfortable, and then some probably, not that they need additional training. You know, I had someone tell me the other day, and I read it, that, you know, a woman walked behind her student that was in a virtual session and didn't have a whole lot of clothes on. And I'm sure that all of us in the room have read things of that nature, and, you know, that concerns me. I don't know how a teacher can monitor 18 kids virtually and then perhaps monitor 13 kids in school. Can someone in the room answer that?
It is a challenge, and we do have teachers that feel great about it. We have others that have expressed some apprehension about it as well. But the PO that I mentioned, that's a start to develop their capacity to do both. It is very new to us. I think in due time, we will increase those capacity to the level of quality instruction in both settings. But we're just taking these baby steps along the way. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
All right, next slide.
But you can also look at and see how many students are actually in these classes, to see if they really are getting some of these large sizes. There's only about half the kids coming back to high school, so.
I have not heard of a class number as high as 26. I'll check out the principals.
Well,
I'm not saying it's not true.
It was a teacher from Spalding, and I think he, as I recall, I think he emailed all of us. We get so many emails and that's okay. I don't recall who it was. I just think 26 high school students in an in-class setting is too many, and we need to help those teachers that have those high numbers. That's my suggestion tonight. And I know when we were at Griffin last week, I believe one of the APs said that their average is around 13. I mean, I was just really pleased to hear that, 13 on average. But twice the number in a class at Spalding is a concern to me as a board member.
Again, it depends on what the class is. I know from talking to the course teacher on Friday, you know, he's got a rather large, I think 20, 22, but it's spaced out. It's basically a large classroom for one, and they'll have a mask and face shields as well in that particular class, because it's a singles and it's only like one course class.
Sure. And I just have one more question concerning extracurricular activities at the secondary level. I was contacted today by a parent that was wondering why junior ROTC at Griffin High School has not started as of yet, but yet other entities of clubs have started. And do you have any information about that?
I don't know. It's time to give you the accurate information on that. I can check into that and get back with the board tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
What was the question about ROTC? Aren't they?
They haven't started.
At all?
So, no, she's from after school.
The after school activities.
Her question was, as a parent of a student at Griffin in junior ROTC, why has it not started, knowing that other entities have already started for the students? And I told her I would ask tonight.
I'll get that answer to you on tomorrow.
Thank you.
The speaker extra activities up here, when it relates to band, chorus, and theater, This past summer, those teachers and I had a subcommittee of our back school task force, and we studied the research from the National Organization for Fine Arts, and here are some of the precautions they're going to take. Temperature checks, they will use hand sanitizer thoroughly in each class, they'll wear masks as appropriate. The students will not be allowed to share instruments, materials, and things of that nature. In course, they will sing or practice 30-minute increments. They'll leave the room for a period of time, 10 to 15 minutes, to let the air recirculate as well. And I want to point out to you a couple things. Smart Music has been purchased. That's an app that I mentioned to you back in the summer. I was over Griffin on Friday speaking to Mr. Lindsay. He absolutely loves the program. He feels that it gets ready for that next level of performance. Apologize. Also, I mentioned the band, they have a smart app as well, the Smart Music app. Also, relates to band, we're in the process of ordering PPE, bell covers for our woodwind instruments. You think about tubas, trombones, trumpets, things of that nature. If you can think of like a tuba, say a Universal George tuba, it will have like a sock on with the G on it, the power G. That's what you call a bell cover. And that bell cover is pretty much a mask of the instrument that prevents the emission of aerosol or moisture. So those have been ordered. They're coming in sometime next week before the students return. They've been ordered for all our middle schools and high schools.
While we're talking about along that in that vein, how are we doing, or what are we doing for physical education classes in the middle school and the high school?
Right now, I was over at Powell a couple weeks ago. They're doing things online. When they return, they'll be outside as much as possible, weather permitting. Inside the gym, they can be spaced out 6 feet to be socially distanced. And in terms of dressing out, probably going to be not much dressing out.
So they'll actually, I guess, be in the class, but they won't really be doing the physical activity.
They'll be doing some, yes, sir.
Okay. I know, the reason I asked, I know we get into the season where they're going to be playing basketball and mostly in the gym. They're not going to be outside like they are, running track and doing stuff like that. So really it'd be pretty much like the old school study hall, something of that nature.
Somewhat, yes, sir. With the player safety precautions.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
One additional question, Dr. Warren. Thank you. With regard to Ms. Duke's statements earlier about the schedule changing in middle school, where did that originate and why?
At first, that particular school was they wanted to do traditional during the school year. And the kids at home, they wanted to be on block. But you get to be both traditional in the building, at home, or block at home and in the building. You want 4 periods to be the same time and the same day, the kids at home and kids in the building. So that's why they switched the block. They have the classes that are like 89 minutes long. So therefore, we provide 4 periods the same consistently. Also, it supports us providing services, the special ed, these are all services to those students.
Okay, thank you.
That's what it is. And that was done shortly after that initial email, when Dr. King and I met with the school and discussed that, help them work that out.
So all of our middle schools are on block, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that just for, okay, never mind.
Yeah, the other 3 middle schools have been blocked for the last several years. Collin was traditional for the last 2 years, and now Collin is back on block, so all of them are blocked now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We scroll up. So the last 2 slides, this one deals with athletics. Talks about temperatures will be taken upon arrival. as required, and social distancing is not possible. Outside practices have been implemented just to allow for the circulation of air and to limit those interactions on the inside. There will be socially distant seating at athletic events, and we're pre-selling tickets because we can't accompany as many people as we were able to do before. Athletes are encouraged to bring their own water bottles. We talked about that previously. And then the locker rooms, of course, will be sanitized after their practices and after games. And then this last slide talks about the media center, pretty much in line with the elementary school has done. Can you slide up for me? And so they are reserving things through Destiny. Those books are going to be delivered to their classes. And then as far as counseling services, they will continue. My counselor and I actually talked about alternative settings because that is in a small setting in the office. And then exceptional studies, special education students will continue to receive the services both remote and in person, as well as the other resources go. One of the things that Mr. Holmes did bring up earlier is that people have to communicate their needs. I think we're just in the space and the area where we have to be open to communicate. I continue to put that out to my teachers, whatever is troubling or an issue that you see, bring it to us. I told Dr. Kennedy just in planning for this, we talk about grow, sustain, collaborate, succeed. We've had to grow and collaborate more than ever. Now, I probably have teachers come to me every day, finding just something that you probably don't think about. The most recent thing was, okay, we need to make sure that we communicate to our kids ahead of time our room numbers because they haven't been here. When you talk about a sixth grader, you don't know where your room is. And so small things like that and small pieces, we just encourage teachers, whatever you can think of as we walk through the day, continue to bring those things on. Because one thing that we have to remember that it's a team effort. We are in these positions, but we don't know everything. And we have to collaborate to make it successful. So I just appreciate the work of everybody that's been working on this Starter School Task Force. Our middle school team, I have to give them a shout out. We talk every day, multiple times a day. We bust and fight through text messages, not literally. But we try to work to get things resolved. I know the high school team does the same. So I just appreciate everybody's input on coming together for this so that we can get our kids back.
Dr. Gordon, I can't let that just slide because I appreciate you saying that because, people, and I'm saying when I say people are on both sides of the coin, students, teachers, administrators, because sometimes I know you all get into that us versus them mentality. But everyone needs to realize that we all are somewhat under the same gun, for lack of a better phrase. People are sensitive. They're extra sensitive. They're hypersensitive about what we're going through, and they may act out in unusual ways. And as administrators, we have to understand that sometimes we just need to just bring it down.
Yes, sir.
Just bring it down and just take the time, just sit and talk with someone about why they did something, or just have a common effect on some of these people because they're really stressed out.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you said that about you reaching out to your staff about concerns they may have, because guess what? That opens up another door that they don't feel like is open to them. And sometimes we as administrators, you as administrators, because I'm not doing it anymore, but you all as administrators, you got to go that extra yard to let people know, look, I'm here on the same team with you, in the same boat, and I'm here to help you. And that's a conversation that I guarantee you will be welcomed by these teachers and staff members who have high anxiety levels, because they do. It's real. And I just want to let you know I appreciate what you said about how you deal with your staff during these times.
to say before we do the last two things of this update is that the principals, their school staffs and teams have done a phenomenal job preparing their buildings to receive students on October 19th. There's a lot of hard work that has gone into it, and as you can see from the principals who shared some of that information tonight, as you went on your board walkthroughs on the 29th, a lot of great work and hard work has gone into this preparation, and I just want to applaud their tremendous efforts.
Amen.
And so we're going to close our update with viewing two communication videos that schools are going to be using. And several schools have created these types of videos, but I just wanted to leave you with some examples. One is an elementary video, and one is a secondary video. If we can place, this is an elementary video from Warner Road Elementary. And I did ask Ms. Garner, the principal, as well as Dr. Kellogg with the Griffin High Radio, if they were mind to share those with you tonight.
You turn the lights off.
All right.
And I know that some of you are wondering, what does it look like? How the classrooms look, how the students move in hallways. But they know about we're red staff. So take a look and enjoy it. And I'll see you back in just a few minutes.
Parents, when you pull into the main entrance, please make sure that you pull all the way down. You will notice that when students are pulling up in order for us to avoid cross-contamination, there will be staff members standing outside in order to direct students. We are not going to touch door handles, but we will be asking students to go ahead and exit with hand signals and guide them in the direction that they should go. Please, if at all possible, allow your students to be on the passenger side so that they can enter safely onto the sidewalk. Students need to have their masks on as they exit the car. Students will exit the bus and a staff member will direct them to the thermotemperature scan doorway. Pre-K through second grade students will move to the right side of the bus ramp, while third through fifth grade students will move to the left of the bus ramp. They will grab the hand sanitizer and move to the top of the bus ramp where a grab-and-go breakfast station will be set up. Students will move to their classrooms to eat breakfast. Masks are required while riding the bus and should remain on as students enter the building. Once students enter the building, we will ask them to walk through the doorway through our thermoscan temperature check and then grab hand sanitizer. We will have staff members directing students. You will notice that we have green dots on the walls. We refer to these as distance dots. Grab-and-go breakfast stations will be set up for students to grab their breakfast and move to their classroom to eat. In an effort to keep everyone healthy, masks are required. However, we do understand that students may sometimes arrive without a mask. All teachers will be equipped with 3 emergency disposable masks that they can provide to students. Each classroom will be equipped with a sink and soap for hand washing. Frequent use of hand sanitizer will also be used. Students will have assigned seats in order for us to maintain the highest level of safety. Teachers will send home an updated school supply list via Class Dojo or Remind. Students will house their supplies in a supply box or in their book bags that will remain on the back of their chairs. Students will not share any supplies at this time. In this simulation, you will see that the teacher is going through expectations for students to leave the classroom. When at all possible, we will avoid crossing students. In this classroom, the first row will exit while the other students remain seated at their desks. Then the second and third rows will exit accordingly. You will also notice that students have their masks on. Students will hear responsible distancing throughout their day. Notice the center blue line and red arrows in the hallway that indicate directions for movement throughout the building. When going to the restroom, only 3 students will be allowed in at one time. Community supplies will only include hand sanitizer, soap, and paper towels. Water fountains will not be used at this time. However, students will be allowed to bring a clear plastic water bottle with them to school that will be housed in their classroom. Again, you will note there are green dots throughout the hallways that we refer to as distance dots. When students are not adhering to that, staff members will give a hand signal reminding them that they should be responsibly distancing.
Parents, I certainly hope that this video has been helpful for you. Maybe it will help you feel a little more comfortable about your decision to return to school. Please remember that masks are required where 6 feet distancing can't be established. In the event that a student forgets his or her mask, we will have a few extra masks available here at the school. And whether your decision was remote or to return in person, we are ready to provide the best to all of our students. It's the Mustang way, and we will see you all very soon.
The next short video clip you will see is from Griffin High School. So this is a secondary example.
Hey guys, when you come back, you'll be entering into 3 different entrances. The first one will be the bus yard. The second one will be the commons. And the third one will be the main entrance. So when you walk in, remember to always have your mask on, to always sanitize your hands, and always get your temperature checked. And remember, when you're walking around the school, remember to always walk on the green tile. When we're gathering around the school, remember to always social distance, at least 6 feet apart. During the semester, we'll be taking bathroom breaks as class. If you need anything, if you need to leave anytime, make sure to notify your teacher. And most of all, if you are sick, you need to go home.
So those are just 2 examples of a lot of great videos that are being created by schools to communicate with families and students as we continue to prepare for our transition on October 19th. Are there any other questions for the update? Yes.
Yes. Who was that?
Go ahead.
Okay, no, ladies first.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. K. I still remain concerned about, and we still get a lot of emails from teachers with regard to virtual and in-school teaching. I've already addressed that. Now we're getting emails about the 5th day to Friday, the 4-1, that we instituted recently has helped a lot. Gotten a lot of great feedback with regard to that from teachers. Virtual teachers will remain to receive, will continue to receive that day for small meetings, small gatherings, catch up, parent. Okay. But our in-house teachers don't. Is that correct? And I'm really concerned about that because I wish we could give our in-house teachers, I don't really know, I'm just really concerned because everyone that is working, like I said earlier, we've never done this before, and the 4-1 schedule has worked great, a lot of positive feedback as I mentioned, but now the feedback is that I could use that day too to catch up because we're going across a bridge we've never been over before, and doesn't mean it needs to remain that way, but I wish early on that we could help our in-school brick and mortar teachers a little bit with regard to that.
Well, because I know when we talked about the change to the continuous remote learning plan, we did have a conversation in the Start Schools Task Force that was on this very topic as we made the decision in reference to the change for remote learning. We did have a good conversation around that topic, and the task force decision coming out of that was that the remote continuous learning plan would remain as we go into October 19th, bringing students back into in-person learning. So we talked through that, and we kind of talked through what the concerns and issues would be with coming back in person, knowing that we had the remote change. As the schools went on and working in their, as far as their staffing models, we had to use a variety of different staffing models depending on the school, depending on what their staff outlook was for their particular building. And so we ended up with having teachers who are going to teach simultaneously, having teachers who are just going to teach in person, and having teachers who are only going to teach remote. So we ended up with a variety of those staffing models, which doesn't give us a consistent model across the district as where we started with 100% remote learning and everyone doing the exact same thing. We know that this is going to be a change for teachers. I will tell that out of our 712 teachers, we will have 380 teaching simultaneously. That's about 53% of our staff. The majority of those teachers are at the secondary level. And again, that was how it came out in reference to looking at the staffing model and how what was going to be the most effective model for those particular buildings at that time. So I hear exactly what you're saying, Ms. McDonald, with the various models, not having a consistent model across. This is telling where we are at this time with some teachers having to teach simultaneous teaching. Now that doesn't mean that a teacher cannot plan Fridays for some asynchronous activities with in-person students, because one of the things we're continuing to do is to use our Google Classroom setups. That's a part of how teachers are teaching simultaneously. They're still using the Google Classroom. So can a teacher have in-person students doing independent work on a Friday in their class? Yes, and still allow them to work one-on-one, still allow them to work in small groups, and still allow them to accomplish some other things that they need to accomplish. But is that going to look exactly the same as a remote learning teacher? It is not.
I understand that, and I your answer, but as long as they know they have that flexibility, I mean, that's all I can ask. And as I said, we're all going across a bridge we've never been over before, and you know, when it turned October, I started getting nervous myself because we're getting ready to do this thing, you know, and I'm nervous for everyone. I will say that, but I feel like after visiting the schools last week that I feel like that we're very prepared. I was totally impressed with the schools that I visited. I want to visit more on my own. Just if nothing else, to go around and thank those administrators and teachers for what they have done thus far to get our schools ready to receive our students. And I appreciate your answer. Thank you very much.
But that was part of the question that I had. But I also want to say to Dr. Sauce, after looking at that video of Moreland Road Elementary School, we need to evaluate some of the students, man. They look a little too old to be in elementary school. Yeah, I think we might need to pass them on. But Dr. K, I received something about, just one, maybe it should be toward Anthony, about custodians possibly being asked to work on Saturday to do, cleaning and sterilizing, and whether or not they have an option to do it, will they get paid overtime for doing it? Is there any truth to that, first of all? And then we can get into the second part of it.
Well, I would have to say that's the first that I am hearing about any type of Saturday work. I know that our principals reflect their custodians, where they have some coming in earlier and some coming after. But I have not heard anything in reference to Saturday. That really is something that we need to look into.
Okay, that was presented, a question presented to me, mainly for the fact of getting, I guess, an answer on whether or not they would be paid overtime and not just considered, part of their, weekly duties. And
if
so,
they're working over their required hours, then we would be paying them.
okay.
But then I would have to look into what that is about.
I'm not aware of it would be passed, but the statement is, yes, if anyone was asked to, was granted permission for them to do that, they would be paid based on the overtime.
Okay. Well, like I said, I think they were mainly concerned about that pay part, but I always included in a job description any other duties assigned that kind of cover that.
No, so we've got some pretty elaborate ways of keeping up with the overtime. So
okay.
we have overtime. No, that doesn't happen all the time, but if we need to do that, we do, and we certainly pay for the work that's done out there.
Okay. Well, like I said, I know people anxiety levels high. They, there are different things that are probably like this haven't even graced your desk, and I understand that. But we get asked these questions. So I do my due diligence to try to bring it to you. If it's something that deserves an answer, I try to relay it back. But that was asked of me.
And to piggyback on Mr. Holmes, for me, as a board member, money is not an issue when it comes to the safety of our students and our staff, period. And I'm all for doing what we need to do for our employees and for our students to feel safe. And I agree with Mr. Holmes. Thank you.
And I agree with you too, Ms. McDonald. I agree with you too. And we made some decisions already, the thermal cameras being one of them.
Absolutely.
They're more expensive, but because we can't predict how long this is going to last, putting that kind of procedure in place makes sense, but it's going to make our job easier.
Right.
This is not going to be the first pandemic that our students, the little ones, face. They may face 4. I have faced 1. Never dreamed I'd be living through one, but this is here to stay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask just one question of either Mr. Smith or Dr. K?
Yes, sir.
When y'all done the planning, have y'all discussed how the mask requirement's going to be enforced?
The dress code?
Yeah.
Yes, we have discussed that with principals.
The only reason I'm speaking up asking the question is I think it's very important that all of our schools are on the same page, to where everybody is, we've emphasized that masks are required. Unfortunately, masks have gotten to be a political issue.
Yes, sir.
We're going to have some folks that are going to object, and unfortunately, unless I'm greatly mistaken, we're going to have some folks that are going to buck it and just see whether or not we'll enforce it. And I think that it's very important that the communication go from central office out to the individual schools, that everybody's on the same page in enforcing this thing.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Shepherd. 'Cause I'm on the same page with you. It is political, and we're gonna have that issue. So I think we need to be ready on the same page, like Mr. Shepherd said, that everybody's doing the same thing as far as these masks at all schools. Nobody, that's one consistent that we need to have throughout the system. Appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd, for that reminder.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any bus numbers? I mean, I know last time with the percentages of the survey, it was, as I recall, it was 68-32. 68% return, 32 go virtual. Is that correct initially?
Last time was 64.
64? Okay.
Since the last one.
Okay. I was just curious if we have any initial bus numbers. For example, how many students will be on buses that go to Dr. Gardner's school? How many,
We did not have those numbers yet. Transportation department is working through all of those numbers and going through and having to remove any remote learning students out of those numbers as well. And we'll, in our Charter Schools Task Force meeting, they run it together last Thursday, Mr. Harris indicated that they will be having those numbers out to school hopefully by the end of this week or early next week, so that information can start being communicated to parents in reference to bus numbers and times.
Thank you.
Any other questions in reference to the update for?
No question, Dr. Kennedy, but I like to reiterate again. I know it's not going to be seamless. There are going to be little things that are going to pop up, but I just want to say publicly, I know we kind of had our debriefing after the tours, but I want to say publicly to everyone, central office, even including Mr. H. You all have done a yeoman's job, and I know this hasn't been easy. Everybody is not on board, but you all have put in a plan rather that has really lowered my anxiety as far as my concerns for staff and students. And I just want to say publicly to everyone that I appreciate the work because I know you've all spent some after hours, extra time. Just said they met this past weekend. I know the work has been put in. We've spent money. I know between Mr. Smith and our fine CFO that we're going to be in good shape as far as these expenses. But like Ms. McDonald, there's no dollar figure too high for the safety of our staff and our students. And I just want to say from me to you all, I appreciate everything, all the hard work, all the people that we tried to bring in to fill these vacancies, extra help. I know it's been hard, but it's going to be well worth it when these kids come back into the building. So I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Dr. K, I just have one more quick question. I'm sorry for so many questions tonight, but How are we on subs and supply teachers?
And I'm gonna ask Ms. Dobbins to, if she would mind speaking to. So I know we do have subs that, they've been doing a great job with them and training them on the protocols and processes. So they've been doing a lot of work there, so it's not.
Last count, there were about 160 subs that completed our required training that has to do with all the safety protocols that are being put in place. So we wanted them to walk into schools, know what to expect and what our new procedures are. So we are requiring that for them to be eligible to work as a substitute. So we're continuing to do that every day, and we'll continue that past October 19th. But that's probably about half of our normal sub pool. So we hope that that number will continue to grow, and I expect that it will. And we are in the process of developing online training so that we can continue to train new subs to add to that list. And so we're working hard on that process.
Thank you.
Good deal. Good deal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add my thanks to the group. What Dr. Kennedy and her task force have done and moving down to the school task force has been a phenomenal job. I think if my dates are right, this plan, the genesis of this plan goes back to August the 18th, I believe, when we had the discussion about bringing bringing a plan back that would allow a reopening of the school. It's been about 2 weeks, I believe it was, putting the framework of the plan together of a 7-week phase-in. And we're now in the middle of week 6, with week 7 left to go. And I really appreciate the opportunity that they've had to do this in a very systematic way. The plan may not be perfect, but it's very comprehensive. And I believe that's the comments you heard last week from Clint Westbrook with GEMA and from Glenn Polk with local Homeland Security as well, as they've looked at our plans. And I appreciate very much the work that's been done. It's a work in process. I mean, there's meetings virtually, literally every week. I don't like to use the word literally, but it's literally every week on this, somewhere making tweaks and changes as things are being thought of. And I appreciate very much. There'll be more changes, I'm sure, as we move along. And but I do feel like the plan we've got has addresses the major areas in a very comprehensive way. And I appreciate very much the work they have done, is the work that you've allowed us to do, and for taking the time last week to go see the schools. Right. And I think going and seeing those, as Mr. Holmes has mentioned, it's a lot different seeing it than it is about as reading it. And while it may not be perfect, and everybody may not agree, you know, we're at the point now that the kids are ready to come back. I think teachers are excited to have them come back, and we're gonna do our very dead level best to make this the safest environment possible. Will things happen? Yeah, they will. It happened everywhere. But I think we have a plan that is very heavy on mitigation and on the response to things if they should occur. And so we'll look forward to see how this plays out. And I'm like Ms. McDonald, I'm probably going to have a lot of sleepless nights as we get down to October the 19th. But it's just kind of the nature of the beast. But I want to thank our whole team for the work they've done on this. It's been phenomenal.
All right, with that being said, we'll move on to a multi-tiered system of support update by Mrs. McElroy.
And we felt like this was important to do tonight because the whole social emotional piece, MTSS piece, is going to be so important as kids come back to school for the first time in 7 months, which is really hard to believe. So.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm really excited to bring to you the multi-tier system support update. We look at the critical components of MTSS. MTSS is a framework to ensure successful education outcomes for all students. by using a data-based problem-solving process to provide and evaluate the effectiveness of multiple tiers of integrated academic, behavior, and social-emotional instruction and intervention supports match the student need in alignment with the educational standards. So we have domains that we align to, looking at our leadership, making sure that we have roles for our leaders in the effective implementation of MTSS. We also look at building the capacity and infrastructure of our staff and providing professional learning, making sure that we have time designated in our school schedules for MTSS to occur, as well as our SEL lessons to occur. Each level of our tiered support system, we have the supports and structures that are needed for each student to be successful. We partner with the community and making sure that we have partnerships that will have additional supports available for our students, and we communicate with our parents and our students on their progress. We look at data evaluation as a means to look at the progress of our supports that we have in place and evaluate student outcomes. Under the MTSS umbrella, we have PBIS, which is a framework used to improve behavioral outcomes, response to intervention, which we use to improve our academic outcomes, SST, which is a process that is, by law, we have to have an SST team in each school in Georgia, and they problem solve to meet the needs of students in need of support. Our student mental health services, we provide therapy as well as skill building for students facing mental health concerns, and we look at our RAP services as looking at the whole child to provide needed supports and partner with the community for additional assistance. So with RCD implementation, our PBIS program, as well as our social emotional learning curriculum, that's effective for about 80% of our students and is sufficient. About 15% of students need additional targeted supports and intervention, and about 3 to 5% of our students need more intensive support and intervention. So our focus for this year is looking at accurately identifying students in need of intervention and support and enrichment by using our screening data as well as other data points, reporting the effectiveness of those interventions by looking at our response rate of our students who are receiving interventions, consistent progress monitoring of students receiving intervention, implementation of Tier 2 teaming to evaluate the school-wide implementation of Tier 2 interventions, monitoring the fidelity of MTSS implementation by collecting that evidence around those domains, as well as our PBIS pod books for Tier 1 and Tier 2, and really focusing our individual problem solving on students who are not making progress. So we have a team approach to looking at students who are in intervention. We individualize the students who are not making progress. Our focus for PBIS is improving those student outcomes and behavioral. We have an SEL curriculum that's being implemented for throughout K-12, second step for K-8, and Character Strong is being implemented in high school as well as AZK. We have reduced bullying behaviors. We're focusing on that by implementing bullying lessons throughout our SEL component. October is National Bullying Prevention Month, so we really focus on looking at what to do if you see those type of behaviors and who do you go to and also how do you respond. We look at PBIS in the classroom as teaching those expectations in the classroom, providing support to our students as well as our teachers, reduce exclusionary discipline practices. We have reduced office discipline referrals as well as ISS and OSS from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, just looking at the months from August through February. District-wide, we reduced that, and we're looking to continue to do that through our PBIS implementation, as well as looking at restorative type approaches, and that looks at repair harm over punitive type practices. With this, we have our looking at ways to improve our school climate. We have ongoing professional learning as well for our teachers. Here's some of the professional learning that we provide throughout the year. We just wrapped up CPI training for a lot of our staff prior to this return of students returning, nonviolent crisis intervention training that looks at de-escalation, as a method to prevent behaviors from escalating. We also will continue to do youth mental health first aid as well as adult mental health first aid training. Self-care is something that we've been focusing on this year for our staff, making sure they find ways to take that time to prevent them from being anxious or having anxiety. So how do we practice self-care? Just take 5 minutes to yourself throughout the day. We recently had some feedback from a counselor that said, just thank you all for always providing such relevant information each month. This answers a lot of questions and helps me to get started with things to put in place for virtual and in school. So really working to make sure they're prepared for the return of students and how they will be able to do both. We continue to make sure we acknowledge our students for behavior. This is at Moore Elementary School, where they had a virtual PBIS party in the spring, and that was helping to motivate students to keep them up with their great work. Future Road Elementary, they did a virtual clap out. That's something they've been doing, but they made sure they're keeping this going by doing this virtually. At Beaverbrook, the counselor always posts students who are being recognized and following the expectations. And this recently was a staff acknowledgement at Griffin High School, and this is something they want to continue to do each month, is to motivate and recognize staff for their efforts and continue to celebrate them each month. Second step is being implemented in K-8, and it's our social emotional learning program. And it really helps to transform the behaviors of students to make them communicate well with others and be able to have empathy and understand how to build those positive relationships. Middle school also implements second step, and they do have some enhancements this year to their program. There's a new bullying and harassment unit that's going to be implemented in middle school. The scenarios are more relatable and greater differentiation between the grade levels, and it has additional interactive activities to keep students engaged in learning. High school has now had this SEL curriculum, and it's called Character Strong. Each week there are lessons that they will be implementing. There's a designated time. The lessons are interactive. Students can have different activities along with staff activities. The videos that come along with it, and there are also these things called character dares that follow each week for students to build upon. So it's a great curriculum now to have in high school, and it's something that the students have been needing. I do like with this program that it also had activities for the staff as well as parent engagement as well. We have those SEL Google Classrooms that we create in the spring. We have activities around mindfulness, reflection journals, virtual lessons, support requests. They can fill out a Google form for additional support. And we also provide community resources. These SEL Google Classrooms were implemented in the spring, and they are being implemented while we have been in remote learning, and we will continue to provide that as support for students when students return and we still have students in virtual. Here's some type of tasks and activities that are in the elementary classroom. There were some activities around self-confidence, being able to have self-management, and they're always uploading different videos for students to interact with. With middle school, you have the SEL Google Classrooms, and again, some of those same type of activities. In the spring, we were doing Google Meets weekly, and that allows students to be able to interact and have those type of restorative type conversations, and be able to discuss their feelings and what they're feeling during that time. High school, we still have different journal entries, reflection entries, and they still have an opportunity to reach out for additional support. We also have the Balanced Educator Google Classroom, and this classroom is mainly for our staff to get support and just have a different outlet to reach out. That classroom gives different self-care ideas, different articles, and also sometimes there are Google Meets for staff to come together and to receive additional support as needed. The SEL Google classrooms currently have 108 elementary students, 106 middle grade students, 97 high school students, and 37 educators. And we continue to add students as needed, and that's from counselor requests as well as us getting our alerts through the life alerts when we see students need additional support. When students come back in person and remote learning, they're still going to have the supports available for their intervention time. There will be designated time for students to receive interventions in person as well as the remote option. This works well because when we're in those groups, it's usually small groups, so there's an opportunity for students to work in small groups independently while the teacher is working with students more in small groups. PBIS, in-person learning, is going to have updated behavior classroom matrix, and the lessons will include social distancing or physical distance and safety protocols. So those are going to be embedded in the expectations and taught to students. PBIS remotely the students will still be acknowledged and will have continued remote learning expectations. Our SEL curriculum will continue to be taught weekly, in-person support from mental health clinicians when students arrive back, and we will also have virtual support that we're doing already with the students who are experiencing some mental health concerns. So our staff is prepared to go into the schools once the students return back to provide that additional support. We also have resources for parents. All of our curriculum for SEL from K-12 has alignment that goes home with parents for information. We also have created informational brochures, parent guides to MTSS, PBIS, as well as information about bullying prevention, suicide awareness and prevention, anxiety, depression, and resources for mental wellness. All of these handouts or brochures are also available for schools to have access to, and when we have those events where we're able to present to parents and provide them with some more additional information. We have community mental health partnerships that we partner with the community to provide additional support to our students that are in need of therapy as well as just some mental health skill building. They can come into our schools once the students return, and they will just have to schedule the times that they meet with students, and they have to have a proper PPE. We have Help Connect America, Grace Harbor, Pathways, McIntosh Trail, Renewing Hope, and Rabbit Hole Farm South are our community partners that we work with to help support our students. And the additional resources that we have for our staff is we have the MTSS handbook that outlines our guidelines for implementation of MTSS as well as the staff roles. We also have the MTSS website, which has go-to interventions to select from for behavior, math, as well as reading, as well as tools that are needed for implementation of MTSS. We provide ongoing professional learning to the schools so that we build their capacity as well as to our administrators. On our team, we have myself as a coordinator, the climate specialist, as well as mental health clinicians, as well as my director, Ashley Crawford. And we have monthly MTSS meetings with our counselors as well as our assistant principals to build their capacity so that we can continue to build the capacity in our schools. Thank you. If you have any questions at this time.
I do have one, Miss McElroy.
Yes.
What type of information is in? Just caught my eye. Just curious in the COVID-19 facts and resources.
We get that from CDC guidelines, so we'll give links and provide updates through the Balanced Educator Classroom. We've also looked at age-appropriate information, maybe something like interactive video or brain pop for students that are appropriate for maybe K-8 and even high school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a June financial report. Mr. Byron Jones.
head of Dr. King, so she's getting me back to Coach Q, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna try my best in 2 minutes or less to recap this, because I know everybody's tired. So one of the advantages you're getting on the report bill later is these are actually reflective of some trial balances that were given to the auditors. So there was not a lot of changes from what you'll see tonight, unless they come back and make some adjustments in the audit report. And just to start off with that for a second, they've already done all the field work. The audit report should be issued hopefully at the November 3rd meeting. We're still working towards that right now. And just to reiterate to you again, this is one of the earliest audits that's done in the whole state of Georgia school system. So that's something that traditionally you all have done, and we try to carry that on even in our transition. So I hope you noticed, if you were able to review your report, I hope you saw this report a little user-friendly. We've got some of the pages turned around where you can view it online a little easier maybe than you had in the past. I narrowed this summary down to one page for you. So I'm going to actually start on the balance sheet, which is my third page. Your general fund is coming in around $19.5 million in reserve. That's something to be super proud of. I think you all know why that is the way it is. We saved some money coming down the stretch from March to June. There's some profit money from the feds that are helping us in this current year, the stabilization money, and then in next year, this time next year or whatever, we'll be looking at some budget things we'll have to look at to see if any of that money will continue. So for the current year, we've got this money that's going to help us with expenses in FY21. Debt service fund, again, you've got $6.8 million. You've got one debt service payment that was left at the time of this report. We've actually processed it October 1, so we should be debt free. We just need to get confirmation of that. Nutrition fund, I'll just mention it's going to have a fund balance somewhere in the range of $1.3 million. It picked up a little bit of fund balance in the year end because we made a transfer, a little bit overage of the transfer from the general fund over, so it should finish in good shape as well. Over on the general fund financial statement, we've got the amended budgets that I think Ryan presented to you on June 2nd. All those are entered, and you can kind of see how the general fund finished from an actual fund basis. At year end, we normally go ahead and incorporate all the school activity funds and the workers' compensation fund and roll that into the general fund. Some of this, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I might can educate you a little bit more on that on a one-on-one at some point. We just consolidate some information in for the auditors at year end. We go ahead and show that on some of the financial reports in the June report. Really, as we flip through these pages, I think you all get a recap on facilities, reports, et cetera, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on capital expenditures. I mean, there was activity in the month of June. The students out of the building, they were able to start working on the security grant. You all probably aware we got $30,000 per school. Most of that through Mr. Ballard, Mr. Aikens, we spent on camera equipment. We've actually already went through the process to get that $600,000 reimbursed, and we had to upload like 100 pieces of information, and that money's already been approved and will be deposited this Thursday. I just got the confirmation on the site, so they turned it around that quick. I was pretty pleased with that. And I'll just real quick sum up our last SPLOST 5 deposit came in, $911,000, received in July for the month of June. So that'll finish out the receipt piece. There's still a lot of spending to do with that money, and we're already a couple months in on SPLOST 6. So with that, that's as quick as I can do. I hope that's sufficient. I know it's late. One of the things I'll leave with you is I've heard a couple of comments tonight about spending money on safety, et cetera. My goal is to always work with the superintendent to help recommend and be in a discretionary spending position, and that's what you're in right now. You've got about 20% fund balance. And the state average, which is best practice, is about 15%. So that's an honorable position to be in, and that's something to be real proud of. So I want you to know that. Any questions at all?
Yeah, I just had one, Mr. Jones, that I had saw that the College and Career Center got like $2.5 million. What was the reason for that reimbursement? that state reimbursement that
And that may have been on here for a while, probably precedes me, and that may have been the building of that facility, is that right, Mr. Smith, where you got that $2.5 million grant to build the facility, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, for the college and career academy.
All right. There are two pieces that are about the same amount. So I want to be sure I'm answering the right one. When we originally did college and career, we got a $2.5 million grant from the Technical College System of Georgia to help develop the program. That was the first $2.5. That was a grant, a competitive grant that we had to apply for and get. Later, the board voted to use excess SPLOST collection in the amount of about $2.9 million to build out the aviation center in that gymnasium.
Right.
So I hope in one of those I've answered your question. But the first was a
well, I ain't complaining about getting no money. I just want to know.
Was a grant. The other part was actually to build out the aviation program, which already has about 35 students in it this semester, and we're expecting to have more in the aviation program next semester. They've already got one plane already put back together in the hangar. I said they got the engine actually running. So it's the program is going along very well.
Yeah, the item you're referring to under the line that says state reimbursement $2.5 million that's kind of sticking out there.
Right.
That's the point. That'd be grand. And I'm familiar with that. You all got that around. Probably cost more to build that. That was their cap amount.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, board members, we are down to the attorney invoice review. Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir. This is something that we've been asked to do, is to make available information on legal payments. And what you'll see is kind of a three-part approach to this. Each month in the financial summary that Mr. Jones puts together for the statement, you will see the amount in there that was paid for legal fees in that month. We will also then place a copy of that month's invoice in the assembly line for financial reports in a way that board members can view those legal invoices. And then whenever we reach a point where Tim tells us he's invested 10 hours or more in a particular case, we will let the board know that we've reached that number. And so we'll be keeping up with that as we come to any kind of a court case that comes up, which I don't believe we have one right now that has reached that you don't already know about.
Okay.
So that's what you'll be seeing as we move along.
All right. Any question from board members?
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. When we were looking at the contract in the summer to the board attorney, there was just some concerns that I had as it related to the amount of time and the money that was spent regarding the case. And so I sat down with Mr. Doss at his office at the church, and we came up with, I think, something that would work for everybody. Just once you've reached the 10 hours or have to go past 10 hours on a particular case, that you would come before the board so that we can give you the approval to either, stop or to continue. And so that was the whole point of getting this in hand so that the board members can see and approve and move forward. And then in the event that there is a legal case, I just felt like the money that was spent to that case was just astronomical. I understand a lot went into it, but I just felt there were times that the board needed more information or needed to be updated. And then I was just shocked at the amount of money that we spent. Yes, we did get $10,000 back.
And you're getting more back.
Oh, getting more back. Well, that's great. But I'm glad that this is happening now, because probably it was never brought up. This probably would never happen. So I'm glad we were able to see it and move forward so that we can continue to be fiscal representatives of our school district.
Mr. Chairman.
What is that, Mr. Doss?
I was just asking.
Come one more time, brother.
I was asking if I was able to make a comment.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just wanted to concur with Brown, and I think it is going to show a good transparency to our community and things that are being done.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. I'm just looking through here, making sure my name went nowhere on here. I see my name.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just respond to one little bit of that.
Yes, sir.
Well, two things. First off, this particular case that we're talking about, it preceded Mr. Brown coming on the board. And those of you who were on the board when this started knows that I kept the board apprised of how that case was going along regularly. The second thing, and I have no problem at all with the board looking over my bill, never have. I have no problem notifying the board if we get involved in some sort of litigation, and it doesn't have to be litigation in court. It could be an administrative issue. Let's say it's a personnel issue and they appeal it to the state board or whatever. But you don't really have the option if you're stuck in that to say, okay, well, I put in 10 hours, now y'all decide whether or not we're going to keep going, because generally when you get 10 hours into something, you're in the middle of the swamp. And you're up to your waist in mud at that point, and you either turn around and go back the other way, or you just keep slogging through and try to get it done. So I don't want anybody to have any illusions about being able to come in and say, okay, well, we've reached 10 hours on this particular matter, and now we're going to debate whether or not we are going to finish it. I mean, I'd have loved with that case that Mr. Brown was talking about, I would have loved to have been able to make that thing go away at 10 hours. But we weren't in a position to do it. We were the defendant. So again, I have no problem whatsoever with what the board's asking for. I just want the board to be realistic about it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Right here, I'm going to just ask Mr. Dawson, since he's been the lead horse on this, and I think also Mr. Brown can also speak to this superintendent evaluation instrument. You want to chime in, Mr. Dawson?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we hear you.
All right. As long as I have been on the board, there has been multiple discussion, whether it was Mr. Holmes or Mr. Graham or Kendall, about the need for some change in our evaluation of the superintendent. Matter of fact, I know Mr. Holmes and Mr. Graham, worked hard with the superintendent and made some changes to what was originally being used when I first came on. I sat down with Mr. Kendall prior to him getting to the board and looked at some ideas and got real complicated and got real tedious, and we didn't pursue any further. When Mr. Brown came on the board, he also had some ideas and wanted to share those. And he and I sat down 10 or 4 weeks ago and looked at 2 or 3 different instruments. And I'll give you kind of my analysis of the instrument that we could send to you. And then I'll give him an opportunity to have any additional information. But it was a not-counting tool evaluation instrument. The big difference for me is our instrument, if we have a goal, there may be 3 or 4 indicators underneath that goal, but you only have the option to give 3 votes as you carve out the whole goal. This particular instrument will take a goal, and there are 4 indicators underneath it. You then get to vote on all 4 indicators, and you have
5 options of voting rather than just 3 options of voting. And so it is going to be much more comprehensive, in my opinion, without getting too complicated. But, so I am in favor of what the documentation that is in this pamphlet is not as important as the sample itself, the tool itself. When we contract with our new superintendent, whoever that may be, we will have to align the superintendent evaluation tool with the plan and strategy that we have for our superintendent. And I know a lot that is also going to be based upon our new 5-year strategic plan that we'll be working on. So I am in favor of this particular document moving forward, assuming that we are able to then work with our new superintendent and come to some agreements with that. But this is one you may have more to say about that, and then other board members you may have some input on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Doss, Mr. Chair, for that. And it first came about for me, I remember I was at a school visit, and I was at Jordan Hill Elementary School, and I was in a social studies classroom when a 4th grader was so eager to share his rubric with me and what he had learned and the different checkpoints that he had throughout the project. And took me back to my teaching days of providing rubrics and things for my scholars. And so just so happened this particular day we were talking about the superintendent's evaluation. And as I began to look at superintendent's evaluation, I started thinking about the 4th grade rubric, and then I started thinking about how teachers are not voted but scored, Mr. Chair, on 10 different domains and different indicators under those domains. And so I figured that it will only be appropriate that the top and the chief educational person in our school district would have a similar evaluation. And the way that the current evaluation is set up, I just believe if we added those extra indicators to it, where board members are able to score on a scale of 1 to 5, and then you come up with an overall score for each of those domains that GSBA has provided for the superintendent evaluation, I think that it becomes more comprehensive. And you're able to see the work, you're able to see the process, the product, and the content of what is happening in the role of superintendent. And so I was very excited to be able to sit down with Mr. Doss and share with him different evaluation tools, and was glad that we were both in agreement that the one from Knox County was one that we would like to add to our evaluation to make it more comprehensive. And so I'm definitely in favor of it, and just like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to research and bring this to the board's attention. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I would agree. Thank you, Mr. Brown and Mr. Doss, for your work with regard to this. And I think the timing is pretty cool, knowing that we'll hopefully have a new superintendent maybe by the first of the year. I don't know. We'll just see. But I think it's great timing, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Mr. Brown, and thank you for your work on it also, Mr. Doss.
All right. Board members, you'll look at the information items. You have anything else, Mr. Doss, before we move on?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. You look mighty relaxed there, brother. We have some information items, the monthly facility and maintenance report for September, the construction renovation in the Griffin-Spalding County employees of the month of September. And I also wanted to I shut down my pad, but I also wanted to and I know the board members got just remind everyone of the numbers that Mr. Doss sent us. Do you have that handy, Mr. Doss?
Can you say that again that I have?
The email numbers that you sent us today.
Yes, I've got it right here, I can tell you.
Yeah, shoot them out for us right quick.
I know 'em.
You got it?
You talking about a superintendent search?
Yeah.
67 have looked at it and 15 have filled out all the proper paperwork.
In the community survey, I think there was like 540. Okay. That's still open.
I will say that Mr. King, I will say that Dr. King has said that a lot of people do not actually submit their application to the program.
Okay, and he did note in there that a lot of them will wait until the closer to the end date before they send in a complete package. So, what I wanted to say to the board members through your contacts and resources, please solicit people's input on the community survey part of it. We won't, I mean, I think that number is okay, but, you know, with as many students and staff members as we have in the community of our size, we should have a lot more people interested in, you know, giving feedback. So I just wanted to say to the board, you know, contact your resources to get them to fill out, go online and fill out this survey and look at it's a small questionnaire, and I just wanted to make that known and make sure that we talk about those numbers.
Mr. Chair, could we have Mr. Pugh perhaps send out a reminder via social media to fill that out for us? Or,
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Mr. Chair, does it not only go to social, can it be sent to their emails as well? Or did y'all do that already?
Has that been sent to the staff email?
It's not very communicated that went to every household.
Yeah.
That happened Monday, and that had it included in it. But we will continue to do that.
Okay.
Because the application closes when, Mr. Leader? The 15th, right?
The 18th.
18th, okay.
18th, yeah, the 18th. So we appreciate that, Adam. At this time, we'll just open it up for any comment, board member comments. Anyone?
I just wanted to, as I always do, just say thank you to the people in the room that have worked so diligently and so hard on getting us back in school, and all the people that are still with us, the teachers and parents. Thank you for your patience. I know I felt really good after the tour last week that our schools are ready. I asked Dr. K if we had gone to all the other remaining schools that we didn't get to go to last Tuesday, would I be just as impressed having seen the 7 that we went to? And she answered yes, and she didn't spend a half a second even thinking about the answer to that question. So that made my heart really, really feel good. Just thank you to everyone.
Anyone else?
I would like to take a second.
Go ahead.
And just thank everybody for all the hard work that's going in, teachers and administrators. But then on a personal note, I would think, I'm very grateful and thankful for all the prayer and the gifts that have come my way with my effort.
Ms. Cook?
Mr. Doss, we miss you. We're thinking of you, praying for you. Take good care of yourself so you can come back very soon. This is a night of praise for our faculty and staff. I want to send a big shout out to Dr. Kennedy and her team for the return to school plan. It's amazing. Obviously, an incredible amount of work went into this. Thank you so much. Mr. Smith, thank you for your leadership. You've all shown what great leaders you are. You've led by example. You've led with dedication. You've led with enthusiasm. This has been an unusual time for all of us, and it makes us all so proud to be a part of this Board of Education and to provide a quality education to our students. Well done to all of you. Thank you.
Ms. Brown, you have anything?
Yes, sir. I just would like to shout out to Griffin-Spalding County School System educators that spoke before the Georgia Senate Education Committee talking about diploma tracks and the increase of African American males in the profession. Mr. Antonio Ellis and Mr. Bobby Knighton, they represented Griffin-Spalding County Schools very well, very well. And so I just want to give them a shout out for bringing forth their knowledge and speaking to those state senators, because I heard back from them and they said they greatly appreciate the information that those two gave to the committee. So just wanted to give them a shout out.
Thank you so much. One announcement that I really want to highlight, because I know people are praising and jumping and shouting, waiting on this day, but fall break is going to be October 12th through the 16th. And I'll say this to all the central office staff. I hope nobody is in the office that week. No cars in the parking lot. You know, it used to be, I used to come by and see Mrs. Smith car here and things of that nature, but you all take advantage of that break, wind down, you know, just shut it down for that week. And
well, we do get a little bit out of it. We don't get the whole thing.
Well, y'all need to take the whole thing, bro. I don't think a board member up here will object to that.
No, not at all.
I don't know what you can do to make that happen, Mr. Smith, but just throwing it out there, y'all need to take the whole week. Just put it out there. Board member, do we need to vote on it?
We appreciate the sentiment.
I understand you got these things that work out, this and that, but Mr. Smith, sometimes, you know, the old saying, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm just putting it out there. You do what you want. Okay. But fall break, and we have also a National Principal Month this month. We'll say to you already, Dr. Garter, for being here, congratulations, and take advantage of it. I hope you get lots of gifts. And you can read the other announcement, but I want to highlight those. Do we have anything for executive session?
No, sir, I don't. But one thing I do want to mention, we've been working with NSBA to get a date they can begin our equity and education discussion.
Right.
The dates they sent me last week were all Mondays and Wednesdays. So I asked them the week, do you have any Tuesdays available? So they did write back, and Tuesday, November the 17th is available from 1 to 4. It's a day of a regularly scheduled work session. So we could put that at the beginning in a work session and kind of make a mini retreat out of it that we were not able to have in September. So with the 17th work, I know Ms. Cook has some difficulties during the day, but I did get a Tuesday day.
November 17th?
November 17th.
Oh, that's wide open for me.
What time did you say?
That's your final. It was start about 1.
I think that worked. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
Good. I was good for you, Will. What about you, Mr. Brown?
It's a Tuesday, so it works.
It works. I know Ms. Cook, you'll have to look at some things. Yeah. Tentatively, we'll put that down.
Okay, all right.
We'll put that down.
I'm going to get that date reserved.
Okay. Thank everybody for hanging in there with us. It was a long meeting, but it was worthwhile and had some things that we needed to go over and have conveyed to us. With that being said, could we get a motion to adjourn? So moved. Got a motion? Can we get a second?
Second.
Got a second. All in favor, vote by walking.